Welcome back to Knockout Sunday of SMITE Summer Masters, a Sunday where we have already gotten one upset in a 3-game set. Hex Mambo take out the Solar Scarabs. They played like some beasts, like beasts of Maravala Island, one would say. And not only did they play like the beasts of Maravala Island, you at home can play the beasts of Maravala Island free with Prime this month. And you can get so much more. There's a SMITE skin that you can get, a Paladin skin, free in-game content, free Twitch subscriptions to your favorite streamers, free delivery, so much with Prime Gaming. So thanks again to Prime for being with us here in Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League for SMITE Summer Masters and beyond later on this season. Can't wait to see what I get each month moving forward, and can't wait to see what we've got later on here today with our knockout matches resuming. My name's Dolson. Trelly Rayleigh is with me. And Trelly, we've already gotten one upset, so it's proven now that it can be done on these second run through of these matchups.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about on the desk previously. Like, this has got to be a big energy. But I'm one-upping your point. I'm saying, like, agree. Like, if that was a tweet, I just liked it. And I'm saying agreed, Dave, because...
Well, I wouldn't have tweeted it.
Well, okay. Well, if you had seen it, I would have liked it because it's true. And I think this gives another just a good up into your what's the word I'm looking for? You know, reinvigoration. These SEC teams are hyped up now because they've seen it can be done before. They've seen that these SPL teams can bleed.
But are the Highland Ravens going to be able to beat the Oni Warriors? Will the Cowlin Wardens be able to take out the Atlantis Leviathans? Those are the next questions we've got. The Valks find a 2-0 win over the Eldritch Hounds, the #1 North American SEC team, earlier on here today. But Highland Ravens, Oni Warriors, that's the next matchup that we've got here, Trelly. And there's some interesting, I think, storylines at play here. The Highland Ravens looking like a very consistent team in their last matchup, playing much better together as a squad, and the Oni Warriors kind of get run over in the last matchup that we saw them in against the Jade Dragons. So the Jade Dragons already qualified through from this group, and then, of course, one final spot, another knockout match here between the Oni Warriors and the Highland Ravens. We had only 2-0s up to this point here in this group. I think if the Oni Warriors have it their way, this would be another clean 2-0 for the SPL.
Yeah, I think, you know, probably looking pretty confident, and I think that's what the Highland Ravens are hoping for, right? They probably sat back at the hotel, made some adjustments, were watching their matches, and, you know, just getting prepared for this sort of day. Right. The Oni Warriors probably thought they didn't have to make any adjustments, right? They got a clean 2-0. They can just sleep soundly. They didn't have to do their homework. Maybe they did. I have no idea. And the point is, the Ravens are, you know, they have to make the changes. They were the ones who lost, and now they get their chance back. So they should be feeling pretty confident, but also they got to bring something new.
You're not the Santa Claus of SMITE. You don't watch the players while they're sleeping to make sure they're getting a good, getting a good night of rest. The Oni Warriors, what a hard team to break down so far this year. Phase 1 takes some getting going. Early in Phase 2, unstoppable. One of the top 2 or 3 teams that we have here in the SPL. The end of Phase 2, brutal for them. I mean, finding some individual wins here and there, a set win every once in a while, but fell back into some of their old ways. And so I think for the Oni Warriors, obviously consistency. It's always the buzzword with a lot of these players. You know, we can play with the best teams in the league, but we don't always play that way. So yes, consistency is the buzzword. And I think a lot of that can start with Vote and NeilMah over in the duo lane, and especially in a matchup like this, up against Coast on the other side, who's played well for the Ravens. Vote has a very important role to play today.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, Coast is one of those players that I think plays off of momentum and energy. Once he gets going, it's hard to stop him. So Vote needs to be extremely consistent in this lane. But Vote's not one of those players who goes for the 1v1s all the time, but certainly can. He's not going to stray away from it, right? If he can fight, he'll fight. Sometimes he plays that role of, I'm just going to sit in lane until level 20. Hopefully the team doesn't need me because I'm going to be farming. But once he does rotate into those fights at level 20, he makes waves. I mean, he's topping the damage chart. That's exactly what you would want from your ADC. So I imagine similar play styles, but also you can't be afraid to take that 1v1 opportunity. You can't be afraid to get physical in this lane, force out some relics. That opens up opportunities for your jungle, QvoFred. It just makes his job so much easier.
I think, you know, I think Vote is due for his big pop-off game. Yeah. In this tournament, a 2.93 KDA, very strong. But I'm looking at Vote's last 6 games. A lot of 2-kill games, a 3-kill game, couple 1-kill games. And so, you know, in there playing his role, yes, dealing the damage in those games, of course. But we are due for the Vote 6, 7, 8-kill game. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen often. It's just been a little bit for Vote in this Oni Warriors duo lane. And I think some of that, You look at Neil as well. Neil has not had the best time over their last couple of sets. Obviously an emotional leader for this squad. Been a lot of Khepri for Neil. And I think that's something to look forward to as well here today. Picks and bans, and hopefully some consistency for this Oni Warriors duo lane. But don't take my word for it. We got Mifflin standing by with the Oni Warriors for the pregame interview.
You know, Nika, I was talking to you a little bit before this, and you were saying to me, you know, Tier might be looking kind of good. How much did you mean that? Is it like 50-50, Tier's kind of good, Deathwalker's kind of good, or is it like all Deathwalker? What's the read?
I mean, obviously Deathwalker played it pretty perfectly. I mean, it was looking strong. You know, maybe I got it in the locker now. I low-key been playing him in ranked, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, fair enough. So maybe Tier doesn't die with Hex Mambo, because I'm thinking they're going to get it banned out against them pretty consistently. Jithens, what are you doing here, man? Like, why are you here?
I'm bored.
Good question.
Understood. He's bored. Okay. And favorite beverage?
Coca-Cola.
Least favorite beverage?
Water.
Understood. That makes a whole lot of sense. QvoFred, what do you think, man? EU SEC on a win streak right now up against the SPL, one of the largest we've seen in a couple of years. You think it continues?
I mean, I'm going to make sure it won't continue, but I love to see my boys, Seahawks, make it through and have another week here in the States with us.
Fair enough. Zeros gets to stick around. Maybe QvoFred gets to go out and party with them one night if Chuckles will allow. Chuck, do you give these guys like a firm like bedtime? Like when are you setting QvoFred? Like you tuck them in or what?
Oh yeah, he gets tucked in nice and tight every night by I don't know 11. You're usually in bed by. Nice and early.
Much more lenient than my parents. I was an in bed by 9:30 kind of guy. Oni Warriors seem like they're in good spirits. We'll see if they can stop this win streak in its tracks.
Yeah, but I don't know how much. Miff strikes me as the in bed by 9:30, but then the window is open and Mifflin is jumping out of it to go do something by 9:45 type of guy. So, you know, Chuck, a strict bedtime. So you don't have to worry about making sure the Oni Warriors are in bed, asleep properly, Trilly. Chuckle's the head coach of the Oni Warriors, making sure that's the case. I have to favor the Oni Warriors in this matchup as you're favoring the SPL all day. But the Highland Ravens, another EU brand of SEC SMITE, and a team that in their previous matchup to get to this point here in this tournament looked like a very, very strong squad. And a lot of that does start with the duo lane here, which is awesome for VaporishCoast because you're on a team with Adapting and Angry and Kana and Calvin. And so being able to shine on a team with all of those other players, great look for Coast, and they'll really lean on him here today.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about Adapting's rotator cuff there. He went for a little stretch, and I could feel the pain. I don't know if that's going to affect. I don't know if that's going to affect his gameplay, but we'll have to see. Either way, Coast has been, you know, an absolutely pop-off player for this team. Angry has been playing so well as you can imagine, but you know, just being able to get leads in the duo lane. Like I said, we were just talking about Vote, right? Coast is not one to shy away from diving in for those kills. He's not going to sit back and be like, oh, I'm going to shred the tanks. You know, I'll just be the typical ADC player. He wants to get aggressive on these hunters. He's dashing in more often than not, using his ults effectively. And I think that's, you know, an intimidation factor. You know, see this young guy who's been, you know, not shying away from going for these pop-off plays. You got to make sure you're able to shut him down.
Now remember, these two teams, the Oni Warriors and the Highland Ravens, matched up earlier on in this tournament. It was a 2-0 win for the Oni Warriors. And that's the most shutdown we've seen Coast really lately at all. I mean, up against the Wargs in their final set of the SEC phase, looked great on Freya in a couple of games. 1 kill in 2 games for VaporishCoast against the Oni Warriors. And then you look at the matchup against the Sages that got the Ravens here to this matchup. An 8-kill game and a 5-kill game, both on Chernabog for VaporishCoast. I think spirit's got to be high for this Highland Ravens team, and for good reason, because again, in their previous matchup, I think a clean style of SMITE should give them some confidence moving forward. 366 KDA, not too shabby for VaporishCoast over the course of the phase there in the SEC. Vote doing it pretty well as well. Anything in that 2.5 range looking pretty good for the ADCs.
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on the gold per minute, because the quicker you can get your ADC online to late game like shred status, definitely the better. So Coast, you know, farming very effectively, right? Making sure to get those builds online and rotate in, and that's exactly what you want from your hunter.
We'll see what the hunters are able to grab for themselves in picks and bans for game number 1. And it's been interesting following Coast's God Pool over the course of the year, because think about like SEC, it first starts and it is only that's all he can really play, but that's all he wanted to play, right? Heimdallr was left open, Coast was locking it in, and sometimes gets banned out against them, and he goes to something else. diversified that a lot over the course of SMITE Summer Masters. Couple Chulainn games, Ullr, Cupid, Freya again in the last couple of games of the SEC phase for the Highland Ravens. But it looks so good for Echrome that Heimdallr did in just our previous matchup. Safe, but also can get aggressive when you get a couple of those items online. So between Vote and Coast, excited to see where the ADCs drop down. Won't be the Chulainn, and so unfortunately Coast won't be able to reprise that role in the same way that he did up against the Athenian Sages. Bans rolling through quickly. Daji, I think pretty obvious here. QvoFred looking fantastic on it.
Oh yeah.
And some decent options Trelly left open for first pick.
Yeah, and this is definitely 2 mid bans and a jungle ban, but I'm gonna chalk it up to just 3 mid bans, right? Dardez going the Morrigan, transforming into the Daji has also just been an absolute menace. So smart to shut down that composition, you know, right from the start. And the Oni Warriors are gonna grab AMC. Notably, something that Dardez has also looked extremely good on. You want to get that pressure in mid lane. You want to try and shut down what Angry's been able to do with a little bit of farm. And as long as Dardez is, you know, just running to farm using those highs for movement speed, should be just fine. That does, however, leave open the Cupid and the Khepri, 2 of the strongest just duo lane characters in the game, bar none. You know, there's not too many guys that are getting picked up before them, besides maybe the Chulainn. So strong team fight there for the Ravens.
Yeah, do you think Khepri and Cupid is probably, in an ideal world, in a vacuum, do you think most teams would probably pick Khepri Cupid for their duo lane just straight up if given the option?
I know that Cupid sort of came into the meta as a counter pick to Khepri, but just because, you know, Khepri can function not only in lane but also as just a great shutdown tool for single target damage, and Cupid, Fields of Love never is going to get like no value. So yeah, I think one of the best duo lanes, no doubt, as we get to see the Oni Warriors, who are fine with grab and vote that Poseidon. We assume it's going to be vote on the Poseidon, but it does have some flexibility. And Neil on the Yemoja, something that I don't think they're ever going to turn up.
I feel like you've now cursed Coast. He is due for 1 Fields of Love that hits no one and does nothing for his team.
I mean,
you have casters cursed 1 Fields of Love this game.
All right, then let me just say, you can never get nothing from a Kraken either.
That's not true, and we've seen that.
Well, I was just trying to reverse curse mode. That was what I was going for.
Yeah, but you didn't have to. We've seen plenty of Krakens miss in their day and age. We'll see, though, if the Krakens or the Fields of Love maybe whiff a couple of times here. In our 3rd set of the day, our 3rd knockout set of the day. Let's talk about this Poseidon a bit, though, Trelly, because with an AMC locked in, I think it does. You say vote there, right? I mean, you're thinking this Poseidon leans over to the duo lane and puts AMC in mid.
Yeah, I mean, that's just because the AMC I rarely see in the duo lane anymore. It's almost always a mid lane pick. We've seen Dardez on the AMC plenty of times, and we've seen vote on the Poseidon plenty of times.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the AMC is just so much better in mid because it's a shorter lane, right? AMC can clear the wave and also get to his tower very quickly. In the duo lane, if you're at wave, you are out of position 9 times out of 10 against a jungle gang, just being AMC, because you can't like leap halfway there. You just have to, you know, flutter on by as quickly as you can, and it's sometimes not enough.
Yeah, you got to flap your wings as fast as they let you go, but the boots are gone and you're rarely getting speed buff, and so they can only go so quick. And Pele ends up being the pick, and so yeah, it would be difficult to run away from a Pele in a longer lane here. What does that tell you about adapting and what he wants to get done here in game number 1?
It tells me early aggression onto, I can only assume the AMC. You're gonna, if you could just blink, close gap, and hit that knock up, 9 times out of 10 you're getting beads. Any follow up at all from your mid laner that has been yet to be locked in, I'm assuming, is gonna net you a good time. So unless Neil's there with the River's Rebuke making sure to peel, I think Dardez is gonna have to play pretty far back. Once again, assuming that AMC is going to be in the mid lane.
Slaughter begins.
Whoa.
Yeah, hold up.
All right. Not much more to analyze here as the Kali picked up for QvoFred. And so not only just QvoFred in general on Kali, but any jungler at all playing Kali right now. What opens the door to this pick for QvoFred?
I mean, it does have some decent matchups here. You should be always winning the jungle 1v1 late game. You know, Khepri is such a big target, easy to try and grab your target reset, but you know, Bellona's not going to be the greatest time. You're going to be disarmed. And since we see the tier hover, that tells me, that tells me that we're going to see something wonky here in the mid lane.
And take over this
land. Was just next to it.
It was just close. That was a misgrab, of course.
Of course.
You're going to have a great late game, but you have to play a little bit cautious in the early because Pele is just going to bring so much pressure. Qvo's making sure that they can get to that point, I'm assuming. You got crazy presence with the AMC, and that's going to make sure that, you know, you're clearing the waves effectively. As long as you're holding onto that Kraken for this objective confirm, you should be making sure that your team gets the late game, and at that point, you essentially have 280 carries with a Poseidon building a little bit of auto attack damage and a Kali in the backline should be looking pretty good.
Well, Trelly, it feels like the name of the game so often with Kali is try to lock down while that destruction is going and then just turn and burn onto the jungler. Do you think the Ravens have the ability to do so? How impactful do you think this Khepri is going to be against QvoFred? Are there limiting factors for Cuvo just in the composition of the Highland Ravens?
Yeah, no doubt the Khepri is going to be a bit of a menace. You know, whenever your target gets Scarab's Blessing, that's always going to stink. But I think the Oni Warriors have a lot of tools here to burn the Scarab's Blessing, right? If a Kraken comes through
good point.
and there's no Aegis available, like, you have to be looking at that Scarab's Blessing. Like, Calvin's going to be like, do you need it? Yes, okay, pop it. And then Cuvo can say, okay, that's my go button. And honestly, if you are rezzing off the Scarab's Blessing, QvoFred can just blink to the Khepri and be like, okay, now you're rezzing at like a lower HP pool, now I'm going for my target. So I imagine it should be just fine as long as they're able to pick their targets wisely.
How about overall pacing-wise here? Because between an AMC, a Poseidon, Kali, you know, so often the story is we want to wait until later in the game, but a couple items get online, you can still get active on Kali. Cullen loves to run in. Pacing-wise, do you think both teams can match the pace of one another, or is there a very obvious early pacing advantage on one side here?
I definitely think the team with the Cupid Pele is going to want to get active in the early, try and force some relics, try and get ahead. But the Oni Warriors have diversified their damage pretty well, where they have these late game hard carries, but also AMC is always going to have some great clear. Poseidon getting access to Kraken at level 5 means that there's always going to be kill potential. And Yemoja has some great targets here with River's Rebuke. So I think what the Oni Warriors have done here is just spread out their damage to the early and the late game just to make sure that they're not sitting by until level 20.
And you know, I love the mindset, give adapting something that is able to get active very early on in the game. I mean, I'd love to see his Thor. I think all of us would. But still something at level 5 that can find an imprint somewhere on the map, something that can give the Highland Ravens a bit of momentum early on in this game. Are there some good targets, in your opinion? We'll get that answer shortly, Trelly. Don't you worry. Game number 1 between the Oni Warriors and the Highland Ravens kicking off right now.
Hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions for you, Dave, as the game does go on. Oni Warriors and the Ravens game 1. It's J-Max, Spooky, and Doug bringing the action out here. And we get to see a little bit of an Oni Warriors. I'm going to call it an Oni Warriors special because Vote has been one of the few players, not just playing the Mage ADCs. We have seen a couple of other hunters in the SPL doing so. But most specifically, it's been this Poseidon ADC that's been coming out of the Oni Warriors. It's brought them success in the past, and they kind of trended away from it for a while. So I'm curious as to how it's going to match up here against Cupid, Spooky.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting pick. One thing it does have going for it is that cripple on the Whirlpool. You know, VaporishCoast on this Cupid, his only real source of mobility is that dash. That's his only safety tool. He doesn't have CC immunity in the kit, so if he wants to get away from danger, he's reliant purely on that dash. Vote being able to just say, no, you don't get to do that in a pretty wide area is a really good way to get the Warriors some early pressure over in that lane. And one thing that's really important about that Whirlpool is that you don't have to put it on Coast to just prevent him from dashing. You can put it in front of him or behind him and cut the dash off as it comes through. So you can be a little bit late on that and kind of put VaporishCoast out of position once he does use that. And additionally, with Neil on this Yemoja, they have so much ability to just start locking down Coast once he's in that Whirlpool. There's so much pressure here. And, you know, Cuvo on this Kali isn't maybe necessarily the most early game jungler, as some would say. But recently, she's been pretty good in the early. Once she gets the Golden Blade online, though she does actually opt for the Mace, we're probably looking at an early Crusher to get things started. The Warriors are looking to take this fight in the early game.
I wonder if it's going to be the Scream style of build that we saw for a while, which was Crusher, you get Tier 2 Charge Bow, you get a Kinsai, and then you build up that Odysseus Bow a little bit later on in the build. But this is the 2v2 we've been seeing most often, is on this right side. QvoFred able to jump away from adapting on this Kali. And it's always good to see adapting back in form as he is now. Will dive in, needs a little more damage to take down QvoFred, but with the minion wave coming around the corner, adapting not going to stick around any longer.
Yeah, not too surprising to see adapting take the favorable end of that trade. Pele, much better in the first early levels before the first item comes online than this Kali is. So I really like seeing this aggression from the Ravens. Use that advantage, push it to as much as you can there, get Cuvo out of the jungle, delay his farming so it takes him a little bit longer to come online. One thing that does concern me, though, about this Warriors draft is we've seen this a little bit in the past few days, is when you have drafts like these against the Khepri, it becomes a little bit hard for you to find value from the Kali, from the Muzen Cobb, because what they want to do is they want to put the Stinger onto a target and then just shred that target down. With Calvin having this Khepri pick available, it's very easy counterplay. Just throw the Scarab's Blessing on their target and you mitigate a lot of what they can do. So you have to wonder if this draft from the Warriors might lose effectiveness once Calvin starts rotating around the map.
Dardez is going for, well, it started as a red buff invade, but for now just going for the smalls instead. And what I was going to talk about, at least with adapting before the fight actually broke out, was seeing adapting back on these kind of early game, get in the backline, power play style of assassins. I mean, I think back to the adapting back during his reigning era, the true adapt king, going back to Fenrir, Thor, those kinds of gods that really dive deep into the backline to be able to find those kinds of kills. So seeing him on a Pele, something of similar vein, it's always going to be an interesting treat, at least to say the least, for the Highland Ravens. The adaptation and the addition of adapting to this roster has really kind of brought it back to with similar veins of seeing the teams of Beltslap and Elysimo the past.
And that's the kind of thing you can expect when you get a veteran like Adapting. Adapting is undeniably, or at least was, one of the best players in the entire world when it comes to SMITE game. That comes with it some veteranship, right? You know how to play this game. You have confidence in your shot calls. And I think that's one thing that really benefits the Ravens, is having the confidence to make the call for the certain plays that you want to go for, especially in the early game where Adapting is so powerful. And the way they've drafted really does facilitate this early aggression playstyle, because one of the Pele's key weaknesses is that once you go in, you're in. You don't have a lot of ways to get out of there. But with this Khepri on the side, you can all-in commit. Adapting has no fear at all. He can go as deep as he wants, but Angry's the one getting engaged onto that Tier 1 tower. Yikes.
Good thing for Angry that QvoFred's not level 5, or that would have for sure been a tower dive and a full commit onto the mid laner. But at least Angry can rest on that safety knowing that he is not there. But beads are gone, which means that is a perfect target for QvoFred to come back to in that lane. He's the only one with a set of beads down for now. VaporishCoast not under too much threat in that dual lane just yet. Solar and Nika, who was getting the kind of the worst end of the trades earlier on, now being able to get some defense online, he's able to hold himself out in this solo lane. But I'm going to be keeping my eyes on Calvin's Relic specifically. I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit over the place there, but going back into this dual lane, Calvin on that shell, we've been seeing so often where supports, they kind of go like level 7, level 8 when they go back, they get their first full item, start working on their next, and then they just full upgrade that Relic.
Yeah. And really, you should be expecting to see that coming out from Calvin because he's against Neil on this Yemoja. You take a look at this draft from the Ravens, and there's about 2 characters here that can get out of the River's Rebuke once those walls come up. One of them is Xcnnahh, and you have to expend the Eagle's Rally to do that. That's an ultimate. The other's Angry. And if he might have switched into the ground stance recently, he might not have the ability to get out of that River's Rebuke so easily. So what you'll want to see from Calvin is upgrading that shell into the Phantom Shell. Give your team the ability to just walk through those walls, because that's really the extra measure of safety that they need against this draft. Because if you get locked into the River's Rebuke against this Warriors draft, Scared plus you're not, people are going to be dying. They're going to drop like flies, because there's only so many places you can go in those walls.
Where's this dude? Okay, so Xcnnahh just hit level 7 last minute. I was wondering, how far back is Xcnnahh where he hasn't hit level 7 yet compared to Nika? Like, where has Nika been getting that extra farm from? Well, Totems is definitely at least one answer to that. So we can see at least where that slight little lead is, but it's the Highland Ravens with a very small gold lead of their own, getting a little bit of extra, or maybe a little bit more efficient with their farm splitting. But, I mean, 100 gold and XP back and forth this early in the game certainly does not mean the end of the world. And it will be that crusher that you were wondering about earlier for QvoFred as his early pickup.
Yeah, I think you can attribute this minor gold lead mostly just to Adapting having better weight, or jungle clear, I should say, than Cuvo on this Kali. He's just going to be able to rotate the camps faster, so he's putting a little bit more gold into their pockets than Cuvo is. But now with that crusher online, that should be shored up pretty quickly, and we should also start to see Cuvo get a lot more active. You take a look at the map, I can't help but think that he'll either be going over here to this right side where Xcnnah's struggling a little bit, or if he really wants to get the ball rolling, he really wants to facilitate this team, this left side I think is prime material for Cuvo to start looking. I mean, we have all the tools there to set up the perfect gank. Vote with the Whirlpool, Neil with the River's Rebuke, and then the follow-up Moonstrikes to lock everything down. Like, this is exactly where I think the Warriors should be looking.
So will Cuvo make a rotation left? Only time will tell. For now, it's a scuffle around at the mid Harpies. Those will go over to the Highland Ravens. Not really seeing a rotation from Nika in that regard. He ends up going back to base during all of that, so it would have been down a man, so no wonder we don't see the Oni Warriors really try and step too far up for those mid Harpies. With it, they've at least been able to kind of close up that gold lead. Solo lane will probably just be a bit of a handshake lane, at least for the remainder of this game. Don't imagine that we'll see any of that pressure there. So I think you're right to maybe put the emphasis on the QvoFred for the Warriors, but for the Highland Ravens, what about adapting? Does he maybe make that same rotation go to do, or do you think he sits here and camps Dardez?
I think both are viable options, and it kind of depends on how good he thinks his counter gank is. He can wait for Cuvo to make that first rotation over to the left side, and then come in after the River's Rebuke has been expended. But I think it would pay more for him to focus down Dardez, because he's so much harder to get away from than Vote is. Or Dardez, all he has is a little bit of movement speed. Sure, you know, he goes a little bit faster with the hives around. He's got a slow, he's got a cripple on the ult. But the Stinger is a rather narrow hitbox. It's pretty easy to avoid that one. And the simple fact of the matter is that Dardez is an insanely late scaling god on this Muzen comp. If you let the AMC scale up to 20 minutes and get his items online without ever looking at him, your team is going to get melted. He just does so much damage. So get adapting in there. Get adapting in there when he's at his strongest and Dardez is at his weakest, and you have a lot less to worry about. You don't have to worry about River's Rebukes coming up or Moonstrikes trying to stop you. Just get in there.
And one of the things that we've been talking about between the EU SCC versus the NASCC versus the SPL has kind of been that time run. You know, when these teams want to try and get active, when do these teams want to try and fight? Adapting wants to fight QvoFred right now, but unfortunately for Adapting, he can't go over walls like QvoFred is able to do so. But the Oni Warriors have been a team that have been privy to kind of waiting out those first 15 to 20 minutes and then wait for that first big team fight. And that's the exact same kind of pacing that the Highland Ravens have also been favoring over in EU, which is really weird considering most of the teams that Adapting has been on in recent times have been these early game aggressive style of teams.
I think that just comes from Adapting's particular playstyle. I think right now he's trying to maybe adapt more to the Ravens' general playstyle rather than trying to force his preferred playstyle into things. Calvin just getting bounced around by the Riptide. You hate to see that. But Adapting is one of those characters who can just say, okay guys, how are we going to play this? All right, you want to go late? I'll make sure we have some pressure in the early so we don't just get rolled over in the first 15 minutes, because that's really the risk you run when it comes to these late game style comps. If you want to take it to the late game, you have to make sure you can actually get there, and that means you have to have some early pressure somewhere, as Khan is trying to put that on the blue buff.
It's an Eagles rally to try and steal the buff. QvoFred half HP. Nika finds a double ultimate, and NeilMah closes off one gap with the River's Rebuke. The body blocks to hold one in. Adapting is out. Calvin not so far. He'll get the revive on himself, but it'll only be a moment longer, I should say, that he lives through. Oni Warriors, they pick up first blood.
That right there, that is how you deal with the Khepri, J-Mac. If you can force that ultimate onto Calvin himself, he's not going anywhere when that revive comes up. You've already pushed the rest of the Ravens out. You've made that space for yourself. So by the time that Spirit's Blessing comes up, he's just right there. You're already in position to body block. You can see Nika just put himself right in front and said, okay, where are you going to go, Calvin? You're not going to dash out of here. If you do, he just grabs Nika, pulls him right back in. That's not getting him out of there. And this is exactly how you deal with the Khepri. You put him behind early, make him easier to kill when he's still, doesn't have 3 tank items online. And that way, when it comes to these later game team fights, he's a much easier target. You can burn his health down, force that ultimate out early, then you take a step back and say, okay, what do you got now? And then it's up to the Ravens to answer.
It's a good ult by Neil to kind of start that fight out as well. And unfortunately for being a Khepri, a little bit harder for him to find his way out of those walls. Adapting, walks up, and that's enough of a threat for the Oni Warriors to get away. What I was going to say was, the unfortunate side of effect of being a Khepri is he is, unironically, a unit of measurement in SMITE, making sure that every jungle corridor is at least 2 Khepris wide. And when you're that big of a target, it makes it harder for you to be able to get through some of those narrower corridors that NeilMah sets up. Oni Warriors, with that first blood, having been able to bounce themselves up about a 700 or so gold lead. And now's the question of where the Highland Ravens answer back. And what is Nika really going to get a solo kill? No, Eagles rally over the top from Kana, and Adapting has shown up. Nika should not make it out of this, especially with Angry on the rotation over. He'll buy as much time as he can. But what will his team get from this? The answer to that is going to be absolutely nothing. It's a free kill for adapting on the right.
Little bit over aggressive there from Nika. And sure, maybe you can make the justification that, you know, he just wanted to force out the Eagles rally, force Cxnnahh to expend that safety tool. But the fact of the matter is, he got that aggressive without really having the ward coverage to back it up. You can see he has one ward there, but it's on the other side. It's not really covering that path from the blue buff, and that's what allowed Adapting to just kind of sneak his way in there, make that counter rotation, and punish that dive. These towers, they still do a fair bit of damage. 12.5 minutes in, all you have is the Sovereignty and the Gladiator Shield, and really most of the bulkiness is coming from that Sovereignty right now, and it just was not enough to keep him alive.
Now it's the Highland Ravens who are pulling the Pyromancer, and the Highland Ravens who will get the Pyromancer. No answer back from the Warriors because Dardez was pushed under his tier 1 tower by Calvin. Now we have the gold spike back down, about 1,000 XP, 400 gold in favor of the Ravens. So still a close game, not out of the means, or out of proportion by any means, I should say. So the Oni Warriors can still find some fight back. Vote, currently one of the few players on the map, at least with some kind of a lead for himself on this Poseidon.
And I think the entire state of this particular game is very interesting right now, right? The Ravens have come into this right after seeing the SPL team lose to the Hex Mambo, so they've got to be feeling pretty good. They're in high spirits. They're thinking, we can absolutely do this. The Warriors, for their part, they're thinking, we beat these guys already. We've done this before. Maybe not really feeling like there's too much of a challenge here. That might be why Nika steps up a little bit too far there and gets punished for it. Either way, momentum-wise, you got to think that things are maybe in favor of the Ravens right now just because they have such high spirits after watching that last game. And you can see that in their willingness to scrap and get feisty around these objectives. Warriors, for their part, are no slouches either. You can see them trying to get aggro on these buffs.
Oh, good stun by Qvo. Stops the knockup from Adapting from hitting. And that's a 2-level deficit between the junglers right now. Highland Ravens with a slight advantage in that regard. Nika still going for this 1v1 and winning this 1v1 against Cxnnahh, even amongst the tower, and he's just making sure to keep Cxnnahh busy so this tier 1 tower goes down to the Trebuchet. No answer back from the rest of the Ravens. Nika re-establishing pressure in solo.
What a smart play from Nika. He knows the tower dive didn't work so well the last time. All right, we're not looking for the solo kill anymore. He's just putting himself there between the Trebuchet and Cxnnahh and saying, I dare you to step up. Vaporish has to burn the bees, but he still might be in some danger. No, he's all right. Gets out of the River's Rebuke. That was so close. That's actually a huge win for the Ravens, because sure, you've lost the beads on VaporishCoast there. He didn't die, and he pulled out the ultimate from both Neil and Vote. You just pulled a 2-for-1 there. You've got to be feeling good, and that might open some possibilities now around this gold here on the left side. But you take a look, and it's on the right side where both teams are getting active.
Calvin just... He just wants to do it. He wants to walk through. That's, again, that's the downside of being a Khepri. Most gods can walk through, like QvoFred, who can find his way to the back line. Angry will use his ultimate to trade out with Nika, and Adapting up against Dardez, who's getting shredded. The stinger has already been thrown, and Dardez will throw out the last bit of damage he had available, but none of it is enough to find a kill for the Oni Warriors. It's the Highland Ravens who find their second.
What a good play from the Ravens, just getting aggressive. They found their target. They know who they want to engage on, and it's Dardez every single time. Sure, he's got an Aegis. That's not going to save him for too long there. Remember, when you're Aegis, sure, your health can't go down, but it also can't go back up, which means Neil is not able to provide any healing during that timer, and Adapting is able to just stick right there on top of him and say, okay, how long do you think this Aegis lasts for? It's not long enough, buddy. Finds the kill, and then the Ravens disengage perfectly. They know they can't step forward any further, so they just take their win and they roll back with it. And they're not trying to overstep their boundaries. They're not trying to push anything too far. They've seen time and time again where the SCC teams will sometimes maybe just push a little bit too hard. They get re-engaged on and things don't work out so well. So I love seeing this discipline come out from the Ravens. And once again, I think that might have something to do with Adapting and his veteranship here.
I'd like to see QvoFred maybe make a rotation towards duo sometime soon. Coast Relic's down for at least 60 seconds, at least on those beads. Agents is down and Fields of Love away. Feels like that would be a perfect opportunity for QvoFred to maybe make a rotation over, as we did see NeilMah steal away the Oracle Harpies by himself to get some vision on the Fury. we haven't really seen much threat on those objectives. Which is why I'd like to see QvoFred get a little bit more active. He's been very passive for these first 15 or so minutes.
Yeah, right now, Cuvo, he's got his Crusher online, and he has his Kinsai online. Normally, you'd expect to see a little bit more aggression coming out from it after getting this far into the build. He's going into a Katana next, which he has a few different options for. But right now, he's just buying his time. He's farming up. He's trying to get this build online. I'd expect to see him start getting a little bit more active once this Tier 2 hits. He might wait until he gets the full Tier 3 item, which might be a Stone Cutting Sword, just get a little bit more shred onto his targets, pull them down a little bit faster. But right now, it's difficult to make that decision to just wait, because like you said, Coast was in a really great spot to gank just a little bit ago, but now his ultimate's back up, he's got the beads available to himself, and still there's no presence from Cuvo on this map so far. But you take a step back, right? And there's really no presence from either team, either way just yet. Sure, we've had a couple scraps, we did see a Pyromancer get looked at a few times, but overall, the big objectives are still on the map, the goal lead is still pretty even, and the Warriors, the way they've drafted, and the way they've played so far in the SPL, they feel pretty comfortable taking this a little bit longer and saying, we've got this, we don't need to be too active early, we don't need to try to push anything too hard, just farm up, get to your power spikes, and we got him in the 5v5.
That then opens up a discussion that Mifflin and I had earlier on the desk, which was these SCC teams, they're more prone to, once 25 minutes is there, they're usually pushing down towards the end of the game, especially with the NASCC squads. They're usually trying to end their game by 25, 30 minutes. SPL teams much more prone to going towards these 25, 30-minute kind of startups of their game more than anything. And so then when you wait for so long for a team fight to really break out, when you're waiting 20 minutes for that first 5v5, it goes from, oh man, we lost the fight and I lost my red buff or something like that, to, oh man, we lost the fight and now we lost the Fire Giant too. It just feels like the longer this game goes, the riskier it becomes for both these teams, Spooky.
Yeah, it's really, I think, a matter of confidence. The Warriors say, I feel 100% confident that we can win the 5v5 and the consequences of losing it don't matter because we're not going to lose. The Ravens right now, they're kind of forced to just respect that game. Sure, they can try to step forward and try to force the issue, but the Warriors just aren't letting that happen. You look at what they've drafted. Neil is not going to let you just run at his team. He's going to throw up the Riptides. He's going to cut you off with his Rebuke if he has to, and they're going to walk away every single time. One of the biggest problems, I think, with waiting so long to start these fights is it doesn't give you the adequate time to address the issues that arise in the fights, right? Cuvo right now, he's been super quiet. He hasn't really done anything in this game. But if the first fight the Ravens take and they suddenly say, oh boy, this Cuvo guy is really tearing up our back line, and now we have 40-second death timers, you don't have as much time to just make that adjustment. So we do see them finally take this Pyromancer. That's the first objective that goes their way.
That's the first real significant lead of the game so far, as significant as 2,300 gold at 20 minutes is. But considering we've been sitting at 500 to 1,000 gold at most at any point, Highland Ravens at least able to make the most of some of this downtime. I think you're right to say that, you know, by waiting so long, you don't have time to really kind of sniff out the real problems that could arise from a single team fight. As you do see some characters going back, picking up some of their items, some minor relic upgrades, at least out of NeilMah. We'll get the tier 2 of that sprint. We'll see if he likes to go towards one of the, you know, for a long time we saw was the entangling wings, you know, the sprute as we like to call it, you know, the sprint route. But we started seeing the hasten one come out a little bit more often as of recent, Spooky. Why do you think we've been seeing so little of it up until just now?
Well, I think it might have something to do with this particular team comp personally, because you take a look at what Cuvo just built, it's the Hasten Katana. So the Warriors right now, they're saying, okay, when these fights break out, we are going to run at the Ravens and we want to stick on them and we don't want to let them out of our sights. That's exactly what this Greater Heavenly Wings allows you to do. It gives you haste for a little bit, so you can land those basics and not get slowed down. And they just want to hold that left click button while holding the W key. It's very simple. You only need 2 fingers for that. That's part of what makes it so appealing. But Ravens, they have a response to it as well. They're going to go for this Fury, and the Warriors stop it.
Fury, quarter HP. Oni Warriors do steal the gold, and they may just find a pick onto Calvin. He does get his shell off. QvoFred will jump away, and the Highland Ravens find a good disengage. The Kraken just a little bit off the mark by Vote. But that's a perfect disengage by the Highland Ravens. They lose the objective, but at least they don't lose their lives for it.
What was that stolen by? Was that the Whirlpool that stole that Fury away? That feels very, very bad, no matter what it was that stole it. And you gotta wonder what happened there. The Ravens should have had a little bit more discipline. You know, if you see 5 Warriors, okay, it was only 4, Nika was on the rotation. But if you see 4 Oni Warriors stepping up to you, drop the Fury, right? Let them go and use those abilities. But they have another chance to defend here. The Trebuchet in the left side is opening up a siege.
This is perfect, at least for now, for the Oni Warriors, because exactly what NeilMah
Qvo
is doing. Every single Riptide has just become an absolute nonsensical menace for this team. QvoFred finds a way out after killing Coast, and all of the Highland Ravens forced to back away. A very healthy Oni Warriors minus QvoFred can keep up the push on the left side if they wish to do so. But Angry here, a Kraken out, the age is gone, and maybe even Angry after. Adapting finds a knockup onto 1. But how far can Adapting and Kana go in this 2v4? The answer is not far enough. The beads down from Kana and the disengage from the Ravens. It's the Oni Warriors still sticking by. They want this tier 2 and they're gonna get it.
Beautiful fight from both sides there. Ravens had a really good engagement. Adapting blinks in, finds the AoE knockup. Kana's right there with him with the Eagles rally, but there's just not enough damage. Qvo being able to take Coast out at the beginning of that fight, make sure he wasn't there to follow up on the engagement, is what really won the Warriors that particular tier 2 tower. The damage just wasn't there for the Ravens to clean up those kills, and those health bars for the Warriors, they did drop low. But low is not dead, and it's not good enough. All they had to do was take a couple steps forward. They still had all their damage dealers online. They had all 5 Warriors online. No one at all fell on that fight for the Warriors. And so it ends up just being a massive win now for the Warriors. You take a look at the lead. It's not moved all that much, but you got to feel it in the momentum that's now shifted.
Ravens?
Maybe not.
Start up the Fire Giant? Question mark? Kana at least swinging away at it. Now he's got some sustain in his kit, so he's not going to be too deterred by the damage he took, but a wild call to say the least. Maybe just a heat check against anybody on the Warriors. A good heat check against QvoFred, who is now a set of purification beads down off a good abduct from Calvin. But we're sitting 2-2 as far as the kills are concerned. Map state slightly in favor of the Oni Warriors just because they do have 2 towers down on the left side versus only the 1 single tower over on the right. But the Ravens are just being proactive up against this objective. Kana pulls it again. NeilMah gets stuck inside the Fields of Love, will sprint his way out of there. And Nika with a triple knockup in the back and an Eagles rally by Kana, but he's gonna get slammed by the Kraken. The solo laner of the Ravens is gone. Nika might just be a curtain call for him as well, but Adapting finds a second one. Can he find a third? The answer to that is no. Vote puts him in the dirt. Qvo finds a double, but Qvo goes down.
And now the fight should be wrapping up here. Angry finds a way out. Vaporish does have to dash, but Vote still looking for a little bit more. He might find it with the Whirlpool.
He's so fast. He can just chase anybody down at this point. Pop the try to keep going, Vote. Why not? Just find another kill. 4 for 3 to the Oni Warriors, but it's just the carries alive, so Fire Giant out of the question. Instead, they'll make their way over to the Fire Giant. Never mind, it is apparently not out of the question.
All right, I was with you there, J-Mac. I was with you. They only have 2 DPS alive, but this might just be a bait. Vaporish is hanging around. They might be trying to get him to overstep here.
VaporishCoast walks in. Whirlpool Tidal Wave. Aegis is there. VaporishCoast wants to kill them if he can. He finds one. He finds 2. VaporishCoast on his own stops the Oni Warriors. He gets the Aussie proc too. Is he going to be able to not only find the double, but take the Fire Giant? Fire Giant kills Coast. Spooky, what is happening in this game?
Over-aggression, I guess, is the name of the game here. Overconfidence. I mean, I respect it. I respect Coast's decision to go ahead and say, you know what? I'm a Cupid. I've got Aussie. I've got healing. This is my Fire Giant now. It didn't work, right? The Fire Giant clearly did not respect the attempt being made, but I respect it. I don't know, it was just so much overconfidence coming from the Warriors. I could see the makings of it, right? They wanted to bait Coast in, get him into the Fire Giant pit, pull him down, but you're just too squishies right now. You're a mage and an ADC trying to take down the Fire Giant by yourselves with the enemy ADC just waiting in the wings saying, okay, how much damage you want to take before I come in here? A little bit more? All right, that's good enough. So Coast just gets the free engage, and you can see it in the gold charts, right? That could have been a big swing for the Warriors, but at the end of it, it goes right back down, and we're back to even.
Fortunately for us, we're going to get a nice little POV from VaporishCoast to take a look back at there. And look at how wise this play was. He wasn't trying to damage the Fire Giant. He wasn't trying to steal the objective. He was more concerned with just annoying the Oni Warriors. And a perfect stun leads into the Ring of Fire as well. And then, unfortunately, he does get killed by the Fire Giant right at the end. He didn't even pick up his heart. That's what it was. He didn't pick up the hearts in time. He left one sitting there.
No!
And the Fire Giant ends up getting the kill there. But more than anything, Spooky, a complete momentum reset that the Highland Ravens really needed going into this fight.
I would agree with that until Ghost ties to the Fire Giant. I mean, it feels like no one has the momentum after that one. Now, granted, that's something the Ravens can sit back and they can laugh about, all right? That's not going to kill them. They're not going to be just in the dumps about that. That's a laughable moment that they can have with each other. But now you can still see this positioning around the Fire Giant. Both teams still want to kind of look for this objective. We are 28 minutes into the game now. We're only 2 minutes away from the EFG spawning in. And you gotta wonder, do you really want to wait until that EFG is on the map? Kana says no, he's gonna go ahead and start aggroing it. But J-Mac, none of the rest of his team is there. He's the only one slapping this thing. What?
I mean, look at the sustain. Nika's getting a show right now. He's ready to grab a bucket of popcorn just to sit by and watch as Kana slowly but surely starts soloing the Fire Giant. And the Oni Warriors will all now rally around together to stop Calvin from pushing any further forward. But again, the momentum reset, not necessarily to swing it one way or another, but to kind of slow things back down, to kind of bring us back to the state of evenness between these two teams. Because for a moment there, with that team fight, the Oni Warriors on their heels, ready to go. I mean, you saw how anxious they were to pull that Fire Giant. And it kind of humbles them a little bit, realizing that we can't do those objectives even when there's two very high damage dealers up, especially when one of the people who's still standing on the other side just so happens to be a Cupid.
Yeah, a little bit more respect being put towards the Ravens now. Gonna have to take a step back. Warriors gonna play a little bit slower than that. I can see this shift of mental already. They're playing a little bit more cautiously. They're not trying to just run at the Ravens to get them to start up this fight. And that's really how they need to play right now, because you can take a look at the gold. It's dead even, right? Maybe the Ravens have 60 more gold to their name. That's not really enough to matter. All you have to do right now is play it slowly and carefully. Look for your opportunities. You can see that left lane is starting to push for the Ravens. They've got a nice chunky wave over there. If they can get that pushing down a little bit further, that offers up some nice pressure onto that tier 1 tower. They don't have to make a rotation for it, but it is a way they can get some gold in their pockets to start shifting things, as Kana is once again the one stepping up and getting aggressed on.
So annoying to try and go through all those riptides. But the carries of the Warriors back on the Fire Giant. NeilMah tanking it up for them this time. Kana walks in, double Eagles rally, beads are gone from both. Fire Giant finally leaves, the Kraken slightly off the mark, but look at the back line. At QvoFred and Nika, their health bars are completely gone. QvoFred doesn't get to make it out, neither does Adapting, but it's a double kill for Dardez. And maybe a little bit more if Coast steps too far up. He is being chucked away, standing inside the honey, needs those hearts to get back out. The Oni Warriors lose one, but they take two.
That is unreal damage coming out from both Vote and Dardez. The Honey and the Whirlpool together, they just put so much damage onto Coast, forces him to step away. I respect that call to go for the Fire Giant, start up and force the fight from the Ravens. The Warriors could see that wave pushing down the left side, and sure, they do end up losing that tier 1 tower. But overall, it hasn't resulted in any kind of gold increase for the Ravens. It hasn't resulted in a decrease either. So these constant fights, they're going in favor of the Warriors, but they're not really getting them any real advantage. And Coast, once again, might make the hero play.
Gotta be the lone wolf for VaporishCoast, but he can't even get in the pit this time around. Against 4 of the Oni Warriors, 1 Cupid is not enough this time around. Enhanced Fire Giant to 4 members of the Oni. And now they can start to make their push. They've got quite a bit they still need to take out. 3 more towers, 3 Phoenixes, and even a Trebuchet pushing up the left side, something that the Oni Warriors don't want to leave unattended, especially with how big of a wave that's been stacking up over there. So for the Highland Ravens, we've seen what their fight can look like in the jungle, Spooky, but how does their defenses look like under these structures?
I think their defenses get a little bit tougher under these structures because a big part of the Ravens' success in the jungle fights is adapting its ability to loop around and find flanks. Same with Cxnnahh. He's able to dive into the back line and kind of separate that fight and push Qvo and Nika away. Under these structures, everyone knows where you're going to be. They're going to have an eye on that jungle entrance to make sure the Daphne's not trying to flank around from behind them. And this is where Neil's ultimate is going to be really impactful. If you try to step forward under that structure, and you take one step too far, Neil's throwing up the walls, he's cutting you off from the team. But look at this response from the Ravens. They know where the Warriors are, and they're pushing it down the mid. Pick up that Tier 1 tower, then they reset. Get some gold, and then prepare for the defense.
The Oni Warriors have already made their way up the left lane. They won't push it any further than at least up towards where that Tier 2 was. Instead, it'll be now pushed towards mid. We saw Nika go back to the Tier 2 tower to start pushing the wave back so that way his team can move in. It's Enhanced Fire Giant, which means backdoor protections, not a factor, not important at all. As you can see, just a few autos from the Hunter will do just that. For now, the Highland Ravens, I don't even think they'll put up a soft defense at this Tier 2.
Not against the EFG. There's no way you defend this Tier 2. You can look at how fast that thing melts. Was it even on the map? I'm not sure. I think it was an optical illusion at this point. But the Warriors still playing a little bit safely. They're not going to overcommit onto the Phoenix just yet. They're pulling back. Qvo, notably, does not have that EFG on him, so it's one member that's a little bit less worrisome. At the same time, though, can you ever say, oh, it's late game Kali? I'm not worried about that. She doesn't have EFG. No, it's still something you're going to have to worry about. And now they're stepping up to this Phoenix.
Kana wants to disarm on a couple. NeilMah will eat the Typhoon, but be able to heal up just a little bit. Adapting on the backside against QvoFred. Does have a bubble for adapting, so can immune one stun. But the damage on the left side, Nika does get chunked to a quarter, but he has his teleport. He can make his way back to base and rejoin the team at full HP.
Adapting is still looking for a way into this one. Qvo has to play it careful, make sure that Adapting can't step too far forward. Did already use the Eruption, so he has a couple seconds, but that should be back online now. Qvo just has to buy time for Nika to get back there, and indeed you can see he already is, and they're still prepped for this siege.
You can tell that Qvo really wants that bubble gone from Adapting so he can get that fight. So instead, the fight will break out on the left. Phantom Shell used by Calvin to get away from the Rivers of Rebuke. But again, it's a reset by the Oni Warriors. It's a reset by the Highland Ravens. Angry from range, putting out this poke on the Tiamat. This is when Tiamat can start getting some real damage numbers online. The Oni Warriors, even with this Enhanced Fire Giant, are playing it so safely.
Ravens are playing very, very safe themselves, not committing too many ults, but here it goes. The Kraken comes out.
And a double from Nika into the backline. QvoFred chasing out, has the ult, wants VaporishCoast. The Phoenix will fall, and that's just going to have to be all that the Warriors can get for now. A 1-for-1 trade as jungler for mid, or maybe more, because Kana gets caught out by the Riptide, caught by a second one, stuck in the whirlpool, and brought down. It's a double kill for Vote. The Oni Warriors, now with the man advantage, can move their way towards mid.
What a massive Riptide. Neil with these Riptides has been on point all game long. The Ravens, they're not ready to give this up just yet. Coast is still in the area, and they might want to fight.
Adapting. Not going to find the knockup he was waiting for. Fire Giant is now off the waist of the Oni Warriors. They're going to need to wait for their minion wave to get the full value. But it's still 30 seconds until Angry is back. The Oni Warriors will start their initiation with Nika. The Whirlpool will stop Calvin and get the beads, or at least get that Magi's, I should say, away from the bug. And with the mid lane Phoenix now gone, the Oni Warriors can back up and regroup.
I mean, at that point, that is everything that the Warriors wanted, and probably a little bit more. They were dedicated to that left side Phoenix. Mid side wasn't looking quite as good until they find that second pick onto Kana, and that's all on the back of Neil with these Riptides. Like, how many times are you going to just stop a person in their tracks and say, no, you don't get to move. No, you have to stay here and take our damage. There's nothing you can do about it. As one of the downsides of this Bellona pick, once you go in with that Eagles rally, you are in. There's no going out unless you manage to find a path to walk away. And with this draft from the Warriors, they are just not letting that happen. Now, Fire Giant back on the map. There's another EFG to be prepared for. And things are starting to get a little dicey for the Ravens with 2 Phoenixes down.
Left and mid birds gone, which means somebody is He's going to have to try and attend to those minions before they start getting too stacked up on the left side of the map, before they start getting into that throne room. But it seems that the Ravens are willing to maybe go for one last fight around the Fire Giant. One last push back against the Oni Warriors. Their EU brethren were able to find one win against the SCC, or against the SPL moments ago, with Hex Mambo taking down the Scarabs. With Fire Giant down to a quarter, the Fire Giant will be leashed, but Angry's health bar is just gone. Xnnahh stuck inside the rivers. QvoFred won't be able to get that ultimate for himself. Adapting won't make it out either. It's 3 for 2. Xnnahh on his last leg will be able to walk himself away. I thought he was dead. He might as well be at this point, as the Highland Ravens are at least able to take a 2 for 2.
That's a nice trade for the Ravens, but it opens up this EFG now for the Warriors. Coast still on the map, though. Calvin stepping forward. They're not going to give it up without a fight.
Xnnahh has his teleport. Does he have a way in? Vote stuck on the Heart Bomb. Goes into the back line. Xnnahh has returned. Vote doesn't have his relics available anymore, but Xnnahh cannot close the gap. Not able to get in there in time. And
Titan.
once again, the Highland Ravens have pushed back the Warriors, but the Titan is at critical health. With so many minion waves there, all of the Ravens are going to have to expend their time to make sure that their Titan can heal back up.
And this is all the Warriors had to do. They didn't have to get the EFG. This is still a win for them. All they had to do was make sure that the Ravens took long enough dealing with them that their Titan was put under pressure. It's below half health. What's that, maybe a quarter HP at this point? That Titan is so easy to take on right now. And Xnnahh just does not stop looking to solo the Fire Giant. I mean, what did this thing do to the man that he's always in this pit just trying to solo it?
It really just is a free show for the Warriors. It's every single time we pan over to Xnnahh, he's trying to fight the Fire Giant by himself. Now, granted, he's going at least even because he's got sustain, but all this time, look how far up the minions got pushed. Now the Ravens have a little bit of wiggle room to play with. They've got a little bit of extra time that they have before they need to worry about that Titan, but they're going to have to worry about that Titan because it's so low. QvoFred can very easily go for a backdoor. If he sees Adapting walk out, maybe he can just go for a pick of his own. He'll jump right past. QvoFred finds the stun. Will he win the 1v1? It'll at least be a trade out as soon as that destruction is gone, though. Adapting, the king will put down Quvo. The Oni Warriors will put down the Fire Giant. But now Nika getting pulled back in. The River's Rebuke to buy him some time. The Eagles rally to stun out 2. Angry goes into the back line. Vote is being choked down. The Riptide sends Vote against the wall. Not the way that he wanted to go, but he's able to get out with the Riptide of his own. Dardez finds a pick onto Angry. Nika is going to find Calvin. Dardez lives through. Xnnahh not enough to take them down. The Oni Warriors live at the Fire Giant, and it's only Coast and Adapting left to defend.
How does Dardez stay alive through all of that? Adapting might have something to say about that. He's right behind him. He's looking for the way in, J-Mac, but can he get there in time? I don't know. They're on to him now.
They spotted him on the ward, which means Nika can deal with the jungler. Now, it's 3 versus 1. The minions have broke the left bird. The Warriors are marching up through the mid. It's only Coast at the Titan to defend, and at 20% HP, the Oni Warriors have snaked out game number 1 just under the 40-minute mark.
Kraken was all it took there at the end. Once they got that EFG around their belts and they were able to find their way to the Ravens Titan, it was all just a matter of time at that point. The minions had done so much damage to it already. It had no health to survive that. The burst was just too good. It's still criminal, J-Mac, that Dardez was able to survive that entire fight. Xnnahh was on him, but the damage output just wasn't quite enough to get through the sustain.
Xnnahh and Calvin tried their best to get both Vote and Dardez. They put them both at 10% health, and they somehow lived through that through the help of their backliners. Nika stepping up big to make sure that they have that sustain that they need, and NeilMah making sure to get those heals out there. Crazy to think that like 15, 20 minutes ago, we were watching VaporishCoast die to Fire Giant after getting a double kill, and how poetic that it's the fight at the enhanced Fire Giant that ends up being the game-ending play. The Oni Warriors find game 1. We'll see if the Ravens or the Warriors can take game 2 right after this.
completely wild game number 1 goes over to the Oni Warriors, but not without some pushback from the Highland Ravens. Felt like this game up for grabs. We go over 40 minutes back and forth, a little bit of everything. Fire Giants killing off players and nobody ending up getting the Fire Giant. And that still was somehow like only halfway through this game. A back and forth affair that does come up for the SPL squad, who are now ahead in this set 1-0. But I also think, even in a loss, still potential for some confidence building here from the Ravens. They now know as a team they can stand up against this Oni Warriors team.
Yeah, extremely close, and I think a little bit dropped by the Warriors. They had some presence there. Then, the Fire Giant fight's the one you highlight, where Coast comes in, gets the cleanup, and then just tries to get Fire Giant by himself, drops the hearts, and just dies when it was so weak. Had the Aussie proc. Definitely, if there was an Aegis, probably would have been able to confirm that one. As well as the 1v1 with Adapting and QvoFred when the Titan's like 1 HP. Cuvo went for the backdoor and Adapting was waiting for him and actually won that 1v1 versus a late game Kali, which is just kind of nuts. So tons of back and forth here, but you got to highlight the damage dealers here for the Oni Warriors. Vote was on point, confirming these Fire Giants with the Kraken, as you would hope from that ADC, and just a ton of damage. It was a little bit too much to deal with once the game got going.
Yeah, the Whirlpool's so strong, and then of course, just the good old-fashioned auto attack damage. 42,000, call it 43,000 for Vote here on the Poseidon. Yeah, not only objective secures, but just teamfight disruption from the Krakens. So strong. And obviously doesn't have it in this replay, but I couldn't believe that Vote was able to stay alive through all of that. So there's some good peel from the rest of the team. You got to give shout-outs to Neil as well. This Yemoja helping sustain up some of the lower health targets and then rolls through. Knocks down, at the time, his 5th kill of the game, and what will end as his final kill of the game for Vote. So 5 kills apiece for both of the carries. QvoFred on the Kali. Trelly, we wondered how impactful it would be. Not the most ridiculous KDA, but still played a part in a lot of these team fights. Anytime you have to consider that destruction, anything that muddles up the communications any further for the opposing team, a good look for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I'm going to harp on that praise you gave to Neil as well. I thought Vote for sure dead there, and Kana probably thought it as well, because the Eagles rally that went for Nika was not able to confirm either of those kills just because of the healing coming out of NeilMah on this Yemoja, making sure to keep the whole team nice and sustained. And that could have not been an end call there if it wasn't, how much damage was coming through. And again, if the Riptides weren't as clutch as they were. So Neil definitely deserves some praise at the end of that one. But if you are the Ravens, I think you're right as well. You can't be too far gone. I think Coast had a phenomenal performance on the Cupid.
Yeah.
Was able to do a ton of damage, come in clutch for those team fights around the Fire Giants. So definitely can't count them out yet.
Well, it's a good look for Adapting as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Pele was finding that back line, but again, thin margins. You look at a replay like we just saw where somehow Vote lives. Thin margins that could end up changing a team fight going the other way if Adapting is able to finish off those kills. P's and B's for game number 2, as I'm sure both teams would prefer a non-40-minute game here in game 2. Wonder if you can up the pace just a little bit there, but both teams obviously happy with some scaling on either side compositionally. Kabraken's been taking a seat all weekend long, specifically against the Ravens, yes, but really it just feels like any team in this tournament's getting the Kabraken banned against it. And it feels like with Coast, Coast's so talented on the Heimdallr, yes, but it feels like Chernabog has kind of replaced Heimdallr as the perma-ban against VaporishCoast here as of late.
Yeah, I think so as well. Just the global presence, people don't want to deal with it. And actually, I always highlight the fact that Chernabog doesn't win too many of those 1v1s, but just the fact of being able to, get some poke, use your cooldowns, ult, reset those cooldowns, and dive back in has been enough to make sure that none of these teams want to deal with that, as well as I think ESET has just been perma-banned against most teams at the moment just because of that objective confirmation that no one wants to deal with. The Oni Warriors are going to grab themselves Khepri because the Ravens take away that Yemoja. They're not going to let Neil have that performance once again. So grab, the Khepri right there up. Yep. But that also means the Xing Chen's going to get through. One of the, I would say these are the top 3 supports in the meta currently besides that Kabraken, which can flex to a couple different roles.
Yeah, I wonder if the Oni Warriors now want to give Vote that Cupid. Just take the dual lane that the Ravens got in game 1. Give it back to yourselves here. You're at least going to snag Pele, and a 62% win rate. Not bad through 13 games played. Was a bit higher before the loss just now on the Highland Ravens side of things.
Simply gazing
Pele
at us
plus
can change
Morrigan
the outcome of the greatest
gives you some
wars.
flexibility as the draft goes on.
Yeah, no doubt. The double Pele is something that AMC is not going to appreciate as this game goes on.
Is that what comes to your mind? Well, I guess there's not much, not many other options yet.
Yeah,
but you think, regardless, Pele is always going to be a good choice?
When you're up against an AMC, I think going to be great. However, the Heimdallr is a great option into the Morrigan, right? Being able to reveal that stealth to your team is going to make Dardez's options extremely limited. You can't just sneak to the back line in stealth when, where Coast knows exactly where you are, and you just tell the team, hey, Dardez is right there. Like, don't get snuck up on. We're not going to be able to, get that big burst of damage off because of that. Now, going into the second wave of bans, Cupid is going to be taken away, so we're probably getting to see Vote on a traditional Hunter this time around, and the King getting a little bit of respect thrown towards the Thanatos. And honestly, I agree. I think it's a smart call.
Yeah, Adapting has already played Thanatos this weekend. It was not a bad look. So disruptive, and just the way that pick can flow through the map, always scary to deal with. 7-1-7, by the way, on Thanatos for Adapting against the Sages in the second match that the Ravens played this weekend. So definitely a good look for Adapting. And then getting the Heimdallr, as you already mentioned, not only for the Morrigan counterplay, but just Coast in general, playmaking style ADC. Saw what Echrome could do against an SPL duo lane in our previous set on the Heimdallr. An option here for the Highland Ravens. Bans roll through, though. Another shot at Adapting with the Nemesis off the board. And Cupid's still around. I was wondering if that is where the Oni Warriors were going to go with one of their second round picks, second or third pick. Ends up getting banned out. So obviously Vote showing that he's pretty comfortable, doesn't need the Cupid, and giving the rest of his team a bit more credence.
Yeah, given the fact that the Ravens already have the double Hunter composition, you got to assume another Guardian will be coming through, trying to help out some of that magical damage. Unless, of course, a mage in the jungle, with the King Arthur being locked in, it is possible that we'll see a magical jungler in that last slot, just because, you have a fair bit of protections. And we've seen drafts with double Hunter and 4 Fizz. When you have AMC, you can make that happen. A lot of prot tread on the Stinger. So the Ravens still do hold on to that ambiguity. We'll have to see if maybe the Adapting Thor we were hoping for would come back. Not a great pick in the meta, but it's just nice to see the King reprise his role. The Oni Warriors, however, still have to show us. In a game like that, when Nika was, doing lots of damage on the Chulainn, but also, I assume he wanted to be doing more. He likes to hard carry for this squad. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw an Assassin, and it looks like the Ratatoskr will be getting hovered.
This would give a lot of extra options to Dardez on the Morrigan if it ends up being Ratatoskr. So Pele, yes, but now also potentially double globals
Ratatoskr.
with Ratatoskr, semi-global, I guess. With
12, 21, 12.
And I guess, Xbal's ult, do we count that as, as global?
Yeah,
technically,
it's
right?
global, but you can't make your praise.
But not in the. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not in the same vein of what we're talking about with global ults. Anyway, that's a semantics question. Kuang finishes the draft off here for the Highland Ravens, and that'll be Adapting's pick. Have not seen a lot of Kuang at all. You would assume for a reason. Why does Adapting go for it here in Game 2?
It's great up into the Khepri. The issue is it gets completely outdamaged by Pele and Rat in the early, and I think Adapting knows that. And he's got a smile on his face saying, hey, I'm hoping we get online 2-3 items, get some lifesteal, some attack speed, then we're able to play through. But again, Pele, QvoFred, and Nika should have a field day when Zhao Kuang's on that side of the map. It just takes a while to get online. If it does, however, one of the best late-game hard carries in SMITE, just pretty easy to kill. It's like incredibly high damage, and also incredibly low HP, low survivability. Depends on how you play it. But again, the execute into Khepri. Usually we see Achilles because the other execute characters aren't quite in the meta, but we know Adapting's got a Thanatos in the back. That was taken away. Might as well go to the Kuang at this point. Elimination's on the line.
Achilles could have been an option for the soul lane. King Arthur is what the Highland Ravens end up selecting. Let's talk options here for Dardez. Early on in the draft, Pele seemed like the obvious choice. Now there's a Ratatoskr added in, Scarab's Blessing. Not super often you're transforming into a second support. Kuang now on the map, second Stinger could be a potential. Does it still seem like Pele is the option, or do you think Dardez has to make up his mind in the moment.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the moment, but, you know, for rotation purposes, just keep it hotkeyed on Rat, and then if you're trying to 1v1 or just do crazy damage, it's got to be Pele. I mean, those are the two options that I would go to, just because you use that mark, you try to go Dark Omen, and then just transform into Pele, and you're going to be going crazy. Unfortunately, maxing the second ability isn't going to work as well on Pele, but you get some decent damage out of Rat when you transform. So I think just global presence and raw damage, those are the options. But as you highlight, there are some other chances that, you know, like maybe a second Stinger could be doing a lot of damage. It really just depends on the itemization and who gets ahead on the map.
It's going to be a high physical damaging game here with, of course, a little bit coming out of the supports, a little magical damage coming out of the supports, but it's going to be up to Dardez on the Morrigan to deal a lot of the magical damage for the Oni Warriors, adapting for the Highland Ravens with his Kuang has got to get it done as well. Can the Highland Ravens stave off elimination as game number 2 against the Oni Warriors kicks off right now?
Thank you so much, Dave and Trelly. Elimination on the line for the EU SCC squad. Can they join their brethren and maybe getting a win over the SPL? We're going to have to get through game 2 to do it, and then a game 3 if that does end up happening. But the Oni Warriors have drafted themselves a pretty nice team comp to try and deal with some of the early game annoyance that may come from the Highland Ravens, the Morrigan, and then adding in there a Ratatoskr. I mean, spooky, just looking at this composition from the Warriors. This is an annoying one to deal with, to say the very least.
I mean, this is a draft that just looks like the Warriors have the early game. Now, granted, the Ratatoskr are going to maybe struggle going up against a King Arthur in this solo lane, but you're not picking the Ratatoskr for lane dominance. That's not what you have him there for. What you have Nika on this Ratatoskr for is the rotations that are going to be coming out from that solo lane, most likely towards this mid lane, or maybe just in the jungle between the two. That's the real value that this Rat has. You put QvoFred on this Pele, who now has much more early presence than the Kali did. This is looking really, really strong. And I think the center point of this draft, not just on the screen, but just the gameplay-wise, is Dardez on this Morrigan. Like, look at how many options he has. You can turn into Khepri and get a second revive out. You can turn into Nika, and you just have through the Cosmos to push yourself out of danger or be a second initiation onto a fight. And you can even look over at the other side. Do you need extra peel? All right, well, Calvin's playing Xing. What if we had a Xing? Wouldn't that be cool, guys? And if all else fails, just the combination of Darkest of Nights plus through the Cosmos limits so much of what the Ravens can do. It's so much disruption. This is a really, really strong-looking draft.
My only concern, at least for the Ravens for now, he is adapting on this Kuang. Maybe he can amend that right away. Okay, never mind. A quick stun from Dardez. But a couple more basics from Angry would have done it there, but it's not going to be enough. QvoFred has Blink, goes to the back line, finds one rock, finds a second, and finds a first blood for the Oni Warriors. 1 minute in, and overstep by Angry leads to his downfall.
And there you see the difference between this Pele and this Kuang. Qvo can get in there, throw out the knockups, and he can just get the job done. Adapting on this Kuang, he doesn't have any CC. He's just relying on being able to stick to you with the slow that comes out from the Dragon Call and hope he has enough damage to get you down to the execute threshold. And before level 5, that's not even an option. This Kuang is a very weak early game pick. He's very item reliant. He needs that ultimate online to really make sure he can finish these kills off. And it's a great counter pick to Neil driving this Khepri, but until it comes online, it's just not going to do a whole lot in this early.
So with that, the Oni Warriors step themselves a nice early lead with that first blood bounty and alleviating some pressure that was put onto Dardez. Morrigan, not very well known for her early game wave clear compared to something like an Muzen who is known to be able to clear out those waves pretty easily. So that's why we saw some of that pressure pushed up by adapting Angry. Unfortunately for adapting, he ended up eating a stun on the way into lane, and that spelled the end of that one there. So now with this slight lead that QvoFred has, does he continue to put that pressure on this Muzen try and keep Angry down? Or do you think maybe he goes to another lane to try and get something going for the team?
Well, might have to hold that thought. Some pressure in this duo lane. However, it looks like they are okay there. Warriors able to step away from that one. But I really do think that Angry is going to be the best place for Qvo to look. You can go ahead. You can gank this duo lane from the Ravens. All right, what's going to happen? Coast is going to hop into the Bifrost. He's going to go back to the tower. Calvin's got 2 jumps. He's not going to be easy to lock down. And then if you do manage to somehow get on top of them, he's still got the hook slam. He can still root you in place, then turn around, walk away. Same with Vaporish. He's going to be able to just knock you back with the Gjallarhorn. It's just not that much kill potential in this duo lane right now. Sure, you can make the dives once you have the Scare's Blessing online. but that's a little bit risky. There's no guarantee of that paying off. So I really do think that this AMC in the mid lane is the best place that they can look to put that aggression. Because then, if they can get Dardez a lead in that mid lane, well, now you open up some really good opportunities to start rotating around the map. And with the Morrigan specifically, you open up so many tools for so many ganks, and the aggression continues in duo.
Some good CC from Calvin and Coast between a knock-up, a root, a slow from range from Coast. Put so much pressure onto Vote and NeilMah. Though Khepri and Xbalanque not really known to be able to win out on those lanes necessarily. And as to take a peek over to the solo lane, for sure, kind of in that same regard. Not a whole lot of pressure really across the board for the Oni Warriors in lane. It really feels like the Ravens recognizing that adapting is going to need to be the late game carry. Maybe give them a bit of an earlier time in these lanes.
Yeah, it's definitely a good game plan to have for the Ravens. And we saw a sort of similar plan in game one, but kind of like reverse, where adapting was the one who was getting really, really active in the early game. He was trying to make things happen while the rest of the Ravens were trying to scale up a little bit more. Now they said, okay, that didn't work out. Let's flip the script. Adapting, you do your thing. You go in the jungle. You farm up. Once you hit level 5, we'll start seeing you again. But I don't want to see even a hint of the Dragon King of the Eastern Seas in my mid lane until he's able to just go up and eat someone. Because that is really where the Ravens' game plan opens up for them. Right now, they don't have to have the pressure in this dual lane, but it definitely helps that they do have it. Calvin on the Xing Tian, the Fierce Warrior, is able to make Vote do a little bit less damage. Naturally lends itself to creating that pressure. Calvin, though, does get poked out in that mid lane. That's one thing you're going to have to be worried about there. You have to be very careful to not let your support take too much damage before they want to start looking at the initiations.
Yeah, Calvin, for sure, just rotating in, seeing if he can find some pressure somewhere. At least to say the least. Hasn't had a chance to go back to base to pick up his first item. Whether that be the Gauntlet of Thieves, which has been the standard start for a long time for supports. Or maybe that Mail of Renewal that's kind of become the flavor pick of the last couple of weeks of play. For now, it's Coast trying to 2v1 at the purple buff. VaporishCoast really wants to get in and at least, at the very least, delay this attempt. Purple does get picked up by NeilMah. Through the realms goes Vote, and through the Bifrost will go VaporishCoast. Doesn't lose out on his relics, just use the ult and we'll be fine.
And there are worse outcomes there for really both sides. Sure, Ravens, they don't go ahead and secure that purple buff. They lose out on the XP, but it was really just extra XP for them anyway. This is the one that might actually end up hurting Vaporish. No ultimate means he's not able to step up to this one. Sure, he has the bees, but you don't want to risk that, especially since you just Bifrosted out. That's both safety tools down. You still got the Gjallarhorn online, but that might not be enough against Qvo. I really consider this, especially after that purple buff invade, a bigger win for the Warriors. You're able to pull out the Bifrost, force the ultimate out, and now that these tools are down for the Ravens, now I can see Qvo maybe starting to look over to that duo side a little bit more. Coast has had some pressure in this duo lane for a while. It's a good time to go ahead and alleviate some of it.
Stars will clear up the wave in mid. Calvin and adapting, rotating over to try and deal with Nika. This Ratatoskr has built Soul Eater, so no defense to the Assassin solo. And no blue buff to him either.
Oh boy.
Up in the sky goes Kana. Darkest of Nights will turn out the lights for a few. And it's a dive onto Angry, who just gets blown up by Dardez and the jungler. NeilMah makes it back to the tower. And 05 Qvo just off the mark. But it's a pickup from Calvin. Will throw him back towards Kana. Stun is good by Dardez, and the damage is too much for Calvin to handle. The Oni Warriors turn the fight around, and they find 2.
Man, that Volcanic Lightning covers so much distance for Qvo there. He was not in that fight. Neil looked like he might be dead to rights there if the Ravens decide to commit onto him under that tier 2 tower. But Qvo just blasts in with that ultimate, says, not my support, no you don't. And that's a huge win for the Warriors. They put Angry down. That's exactly who we wanted to see them start to target a little bit. They punished that blue buff invade, make it a 2 for, I think 0 was the trade for the Warriors. And if you walk away from that, feeling that good, especially when your Nika has no defense, that's a great spot for you to be in.
Fortunately, adapting just doesn't have the damage yet to find the kill onto this Ratatoskr. No blue buff means that Nika is going to be suffering in the mana sustain department for a little while longer. VaporishCoast once again disrupting around the purple buff. Doesn't end up getting the steal this time. Gets pulled back by NeilMah. But there's some support from Calvin in the 2v1. Shouldn't be enough to kill NeilMah during this fight. Neil will just be fine. But that's another ultimate by Coast used offensively, but nothing to be gained from it.
Yeah, it's almost starting to look like Coast is maybe just pulling that trigger a little bit too soon there. Yes, Neil is on top of you, but what was he really going to do? It's just a Khepri at this point. He's level 7. He's building full defense. He's not going to be able to just deal the damage to Coast. Now, there's an argument to be made that he was concerned about the CC that comes out from Neil, but that had already been used just keeping Coast away from that purple buff. The Coast maybe is still feeling the first game a little bit too strongly. He was really swinging for a lot of damage there. It's time to take a step back, wind it down a little bit, and sure, you can keep up this pressure on the purple buff, but you also have some pressure on the right side there on Cxnnahh.
Cxnnahh will make it out, despite the fact there were 3 people hot on his heels at that point.
Oh, that's an
It'll
early
all
blip.
just be to at least secure the blue buff for Nika. NeilMah runs into Calvin. Dardez will be there to make sure that he can join in the mid lane. So a lot of groupings by these teams. He's been very quiet out of adapting so far. He's tried to make things go, just like Calvin has here. But Calvin will get some assistance. The ultimate comes out too early from NeilMah, and the execution is good. But QvoFred can continue to chase and continue the kill as Dardez finds Calvin. 2-for-1 trade, but at least the Highland Ravens have finally got themselves on the board.
Yeah, that Scare's Blessing is not going to save you against a hungry dragon there, Neil. Adapting, that is exactly what he picks this Kuang for. Finds him, forces out the Scare's Blessing, and that's really a double win for the Ravens there, right? You get the kill, and you've completely wasted the ultimate. This should allow the Ravens to find a little bit more aggression on the map now that that Blessing is down. The downside is you traded 2 for 1. It wasn't the cleanest trade in the world. You're still on the losing end of that. The good news, though, is that the gold lead really isn't separating too much right now. You're still well within your fight back territory there. And Adapting's gone for the early glyph. He's got the Nimble Bancroft's talent online. So, sure, he doesn't have any rings online, but he is going to have a little bit more attack speed, which is going to make these dragons come out a little bit faster. And that's where Kuang is really reliant on his damage. He has to get that Dragon Call online, get them swinging and hitting on his target. If you're going for the Pyromancer, that's a really good start too.
Close call. Thought Nika may have stolen that one with the Acorn Blast, but Highland Ravens do get the Pyro and close up that goalie. What was 1,000 is now only a couple hundred at this point. So the experience with a nice little lead for the Oni Warriors, 1,400 in that regard. Most of that coming from the mid 2v2 of the jungle and mid laner for both these two teams. Oni Warriors slightly ahead in that regard. But Nika with 3 assists to his name, the fact that so much fighting has happened around that right side of the map, even with the 3 assists to his name, he's starting to fall a little bit behind Cxnnahh. Not too much, nothing drastic, nothing we have to raise the alarm bells on just yet. But definitely be keeping your eyes to see what kind of impact Cxnnahh can make with this slight advantage against 2 assassins. He'll be just fine.
Yeah, Cxnnahh should be able to walk away from this one, no problem. And I think the reason that this lead is starting to show up a little bit is because you see the Soul Eater here, right? And this is fairly standard for the assassin solo laners. They tend to go to this Soul Eater first, get a little bit of damage, a little bit of sustain in their kits going for them. But this isn't the first damage item for Nika. No, he also has the Acorn online, and you can see the results of not having any defense in his build right there. Cxnnahh takes him up, deals a bunch of damage, forces Nika to reset, but that's not where the real fight is. It's here in the mid lane.
Calvin picks up one, throws him away, but Angry is the one who really needed the help. Dardez is slamming away with a volcanic lightning of his own. Nika slams down on Adapting in the backline and finds a kill onto the enemy jungler. But QvoFred has been left to dry, except that NeilMah finds the revive and brings his jungler back from the depths of Hades for another 2 picks for the Warriors.
The downside of losing Adapting so early in that, under that tier 1 tower, means there's no execute available to finish that kill off. Neil just turns around, finds the Scare's Blessing, and right back to safety. That's just a feels bad moment for the Ravens, because you look at that and you think, okay, we've lost a couple members, but we can trade back at least 1 here. Denied. Neil says, no, that one's here for us. And now this gold lead is starting to creep right back up to where it was before. Pyromancer doesn't matter anymore. And that's where this build is starting to pay off for Nika, right? It just drops down from through the Cosmos, and Adapting just gets deleted in a heartbeat. There really wasn't anything he could do about it. And Vapor is still looking for the 1v1s, man.
Does manage to get the ult from Coast is Vote, but it cost him his beads to do so. NeilMah rotates over to help push the Trebuchet. Some help is needed for Dardez. That's why Qvo is here. Not going to get a whole lot of damage out just yet. fairly tanky on that Xing Qian, but Vote with the help of the Trebuchet, tier 1 tower goes down. And add a little bit more gold to the pockets of the Oni Warriors. And now with that advantage in the dual lane with ult gone from Coast, what can the Ravens do, Spooky, to try and fight back into this early game?
Well, they're getting to the point where they need to start being a little bit more careful. This lead is starting to build up a little bit more, around 1,800 now in favor of the Warriors, but that's only 1,800. That's not too bad. The Ravens still have plenty of time to step up around these objectives, look for some more even fights. Calvin making this rotation might be a good place to start.
Beat's gone from Coast, but he
not
did
far.
not go very far with the Bifrost. QvoFred puts him down, adapting, wants the execute, but he's not even going to need it. It's angry. Drops the honey, gets the damage out there, and the Highland Ravens can answer back, making a 1-for-1 trade and getting a big shutdown on Qvo.
That's an excellent response from the Ravens. This is something they need to start doing. Too often have the Warriors been stepping up to this purple buff, looking for the invade and not being punished for it. Now the Ravens say, okay, we've got to beat on what the Warriors want to do. We know where they're going to be. Let's go ahead and match that rotation, answer back. Put Qvo down. Sure, they lost Coast, which doesn't feel the best, but he's Heimdallr. He's going to be able to stay safe, and it's Coast. He's going to be swinging no matter what. He's okay with this one death. I think the really important thing there is Adapting did not use his ultimate to secure that kill. He wants to make sure that when he's using his ultimate, he's using it on a target that Neil has put his own Scarab's Blessing onto and nullify the advantage that comes out of that. By holding the ultimate, they're still in fighting shape around these objectives, and I really like to see the Ravens maybe start to take a step forward to around this Gold Fury or even this Pyromancer is coming back up.
There is a bit of a lead disparity, at least between the junglers for now. QvoFred, even despite the shutdown, going over to the Highland Ravens onto him, still 2 levels up for the jungler of the Oni Warriors. Feels like Adapting is making it through at least the worst part of the game for the Yao Kuang.
Yeah.
2 items online now, another ring should start to get that damage spike up there for him. So maybe we'll start to see some more impact plays from Adapting as this game goes on. But Angry has just been the unfortunate benefactor for the Oni Warriors. 1-4. But that won't stop the rest of the Ravens, who are doing just fine on their own, of going towards this Pyromancer. But look at the answer back from the Oni Warriors already around the Gold Fury. VaporishCoast and the Ravens know this is happening. The Oracle Vision is there, but Coast can't even step up past QvoFred to try and get there. It's a Pyromancer for the Highland Ravens,
wait, what?
a Gold Fury for the Oni Warriors,
No way.
but maybe an even better Fire Giant call for the Highland Ravens. Nika up into the sky, sees the fire ring is there, will crash down in to disrupt the party, but the Fire Giant
Okay.
at 16 minutes goes to the Highland Ravens. What a call by the SCC.
I mean, go for it. Oh, but here comes Dardez. They're looking to answer back, J-Mac.
Adapting low, Adapting doesn't find the execute he was looking for. Nika low, gets the Scarab's Blessing. Dardez finds the kill on Adapting. QvoFred finds some good damage onto Calvin. Bakana and Angry are both very healthy. Qvo is not. NeilMah does not have the Scarab's Blessing to help him any longer. And the Highland Ravens make a 1-for-1 trade, but 4 still with fire.
That is so much in favor of the Ravens. Kana, it might not have been a 1v1, but he finally gets that Fire Giant he's been looking for the past game and a half now. What a play coming out from the Ravens. Nika had a good answer back through the Cosmos was there. He did drop down into the fire pit, but his decision was to turn on to Kana and try to force him out. Maybe it would have worked better if he turned onto the Fire Giant itself. He has 2 damage items, almost 2.5 damage items if you count the Glad Shield. And it was already at such a low threshold. I don't know, I think the Warriors did as best they could matching that call, and now gold lead is only 500 in favor of the Warriors. It's not often that you see the Pyromancer started up, the Gold Fury answered, and then, oh, well, let's just do a Fire Giant. But the Ravens, such good discipline to know that they had that opportunity and make the most of it. And you can see Kana just zoning Nika off the entire time. Nika wanted to step forward without using the ultimate, but that King Arthur was in his face, not letting them step up.
I think maybe probably the biggest, at least, reason that the Highland Ravens know they can do that isn't just because of the fact that Coast walked over and dealt with the Gold Fury. Isn't the fact that the Gold Fury sound effect goes off. It's the fact that the Oracle Vision was on there and they saw 4 people from the Oni Warriors there, and at least for Kana knowing that Nika was in the right side of the map. That's at least an easy call for the Highland Ravens. So 4 with Fire Giant and still 2 minutes to play with it. They'll at least start up their siege on the left side of the map. Vote and NeilMah are here. They're not going to stop a tier 1 tower, push no reason to, or maybe they wait for the counter initiation, but nobody else is nearby, only NeilMah up at the front lines.
Now, the downside of this Fire Giant is it's still only 18.5 minutes into the game, right? We're not super far in. We don't have a ton of items online. It's mostly 3 to 2.5 items online for the Ravens right now. The Fire Giant is a good boost, but you're mostly looking at these tier 1 towers that are going to be stripped down. They can put some pressure on these tier 2s, but with the gold where it's at right now, the Oni Warriors are still in a very fine position to step up and say, okay, you can pressure this tier 2, but you're not getting it for free. They've got plenty of fight back potential. They still have all their ultimates available. Granted, the Ravens have those as well, but you're looking at this siege early on. You've got 2 ultimates you got to be concerned about when it comes to Dardez. Things might not look quite as easy, quite as good as one might first initially think.
Questionable step up by QvoFred. He loses his Magi's because of it. Now be down for another 60 seconds. But he's coming for the wraparound. Ward will spot him out, so he'll have to deward that. The Highland Ravens know that not everybody is where they seem to be. Even adapting a Nika. Spotting each other out on the right side jungle. Means the Highland Ravens aren't going to continue any furthermore, at least on this mid-tier 2 push. They'll back up to grab the Greater Scorpion, and then they'll be able to grab anything left amongst their jungle. So with the Fire Giant for 4 members of the Ravens, seems for now, Spooky, all they were able to get was a few tier 1 towers. Definitely not the end of the world for the Oni Warriors, who are only down 1,000 gold going into that now.
Yeah, this Fire Giant has really just been to mitigate the lead that the Warriors were building up. Now they've got a little bit of a lead for themselves, the Ravens that is, but it's still not enough of a lead to feel like you have a real advantage in this game. The scoreboard, 9-3, doesn't really reflect how close this game actually is so far because it's been so objective focused. A lot of these kills have come through, just haven't been around these big play points, Pyromancer, Fury, Fire Giant. And that's really why the Ravens are able to secure themselves a Fire Giant, is because the fighting has largely been over nothing. It's just been small ganks in the mid lane, small ganks in the duo lane. And that's why they're able to stabilize here. Now we're in the mid to late game, and we're still looking at tier 2 towers on the board. And now this Fire Giant has finally fallen off. The next one is the one that we're really concerned about.
How dangerous does this get for the Oni Warriors? I mean, we were talking about between the desks, just between us, how much the Ravens want to get to late game. I mean, you have an Kuang, early game struggles, now 3 full items deep, and continuing to push on as this game goes. How much harder does it make this for the Oni Warriors to try and deal with adapting once these team fights start to break out, Spooky?
It really comes down to vision and how well you're able to keep track of where adapting is and what he's trying to do in these fights. Nika, I think, is going to be a critical role in this, just because he can go into the air and kind of scout out and figure out, okay, where's the team at, where's adapting trying to play from. On the other hand, though, Nika's also the primary engage. He's not going to be able to just play that safety role. So it really comes down to this balancing act of being able to find your initiation while also knowing where adapting is for the counter initiation. Good news is the Warriors have plenty of tools to counter that counter initiation. Neil obviously has Scared's Blessing. It's not going to do any good against adapting specifically, but if you can land a good Volcanic Lightning into the backline, throw your Scared's Blessing onto Cuvo, pull him back to safety, that's already a big swing in your favor.
For now, the Oni Warriors will leave NeilMah around the Gold Fury. The Highland Ravens still grouped up as 4 on the left side. It seems that the tango around the Fury will finally disperse. So that way the teams can go back to farming. No fight to be broken out over this neutral objective. Still an important one, even at this stage of the game, to be able to try and get some pressure in the lanes. NeilMah and Vote will stick around. No Oracle Vision in the pit, but some ward coverage at the least by the Highland Ravens. We'll move over to the Pyromancer. Nika has a chance to seal this, maybe a little too early on the Acorn Blast. That opens up once again the Oni Fury, but this time there is no Fire Giant answer by the Highland Ravens. A root onto Calvin, pulls him back in, and Calvin low on HP. The shell, the only thing keeping him alive at that point. And the Highland Ravens support now out of the team fight.
Beautiful engagement from the Warriors, and the way they back off is because they know Adapti's try to make that flank round. Nika had the eyes on him, and straight back to the Fury. Nika's going up into the air. Let's see how this plans out.
Crash in the backline to distract Coast and Angry. QvoFred as well at the front, and the Oni Warriors will grab the Oni Fury this time around. Pyromancer still did go to the Ravens from earlier on, We do still see that very slight gold lead, though it's a spike down for the Ravens and then a spike back up towards the Warriors. 23 minutes in. More kills than we had in game 1 by this point in time, but the lead at the exact same position that it was then.
Yeah, at the end of the day, though, this does favor the Warriors. They're the ones who got the Fury. They're the ones who have the enhanced minions on the map. Those minions are going to put pressure on these lanes. Sure, it might just be a tier 1 and 2 lanes, and Coast is over there on that left side to wipe out the Onis, but now this opens up the Fire Giant for the Warriors to step up to.
Kana goes up to the pit, finds some CC against Neil. That's enough for the Oni Warriors to back away from the pit. Just going for a heat check to see if anybody was in the area for the Highland Ravens, and there were a couple of people ready to go. So it gives the time for the Oni Warriors to reset themselves. Do a bit of a relic roundup for everybody. It's only the teleport and a blink down for their respective solo laners. The supports relics more than anything. The one still waiting for a cooldown. Keep your eyes on both of Calvin's. 40 seconds until he has that shell and before he has that sprint back online.
And it's going to be a dangerous position for both teams now. They're going to have to play this very, very carefully. You can already see neither one is really willing to step too far forward here. This isn't as simple as just taking a 5-on-5 around the Fire Giant. Both teams are looking to find themselves a pick here. Dardez and Adapting on their initial picks here are very good at facilitating that kind of game plan. The question is, though, can they make it happen? Both teams are playing very confidently around each other. And I really think this comes down to Adapting to really break this game open for the Ravens. He's the one who can get through this Scarab's Blessing and find a pick regardless of what defense they try to put on it. Dardez, he's not going to have that same ability. He's sure, you know, he can go ahead and turn into Adapting and try to get in there, but it's kind of risky when you look at the team that the Ravens have. It's not going to dissuade them, though. They are going to walk at Kana. But still, J-Mac, there's just no real aggression to be had here just yet. Qvo might change things if he gets picked out here.
Ultimate used. But that Magi's means Adapting cannot continue the fight up against him. Instead, it's Nika bringing the pain back to Adapting, bringing the pain back over to Coast. Kana gets pulled in by NeilMah once again. Half HP. It's Calvin who finds the ultimate this time around. My mistake, it was Kana pulled in moments ago. The Highland Ravens retreat back to their tier 1 tower. A couple of members at half HP and under, while the Oni Warriors are rather healthy to move towards this Fire Giant.
Look at the ultimates that have been expended. 4 on the side of the Warriors, only 2 for the Ravens. This still isn't a terrible fight for the Ravens if they decide to step forward. Warriors have to be extremely careful about how they want to start this Fire Giant up. And indeed, it doesn't seem that they do want to start it. They did not find nearly enough in that fight to feel comfortable stepping forward, but Ravens still in the area, are going to shift over to this right side and try to take down this Trebuchet before it gets too much value.
Trebuchet won't be able to get anything for now. The Highland Ravens are the ones who start up the Fire Giant. Baiting in the Warriors, Kana pulled in, but Kana is fine. Loses only a little bit of health. Nika dives in on Angry, and QvoFred by himself in the back line is being dealt with by Kana. But it's a trade for trade as far as their abilities are concerned. Adapting stealth in the middle of everybody. D-stealth in the middle of everybody. And QvoFred finds the first pick of the team fight with Kana at a quarter HP and teleport on cooldown. This is the perfect opportunity for the Oni Warriors to go in. Nika does get knocked up, and some good damage by the Ratatoskr will push the Ravens back. And the Oni Warriors can reset to the objective once more.
Right back they go. Man, these backline dives are just not working out for either team right now. The only reason that goes in the favor of the Warriors is not because Qvo was able to find a good initiation on the back, is because Adapting stepped a little bit too far forward trying to find his own flank on the backline of the Warriors. But still, the Ravens have not had enough. They still want more.
NeilMah already gone from the fight, but Nika tries to find one on the coast. Doesn't get the damage he needed and sent through the realms. But Kana has been sent to the grave by Dardez, and as soon as Dardez lands back down in, that's a slam and a jam for Nika. 2 down for Nika, 4 gone from the Highland Ravens. But the Oni Warriors not healthy for the objective this time around.
Slam, jam, put it on some flatbread, put it in a pizza. You're having a nice meal here for the Warriors. They're going to go ahead and reset. Angry does try to catch Dardez out there, but unfortunately not able to do so. This opens everything up for the Warriors. Still 30 seconds until the next member of the Ravens comes back. There's 2 alive right now, but the Warriors making a beeline straight to the Fire Giant. Angry and Adapting are in position, but a 2v5 does not favor you. But Qvo and Nika, they want to look for the picks before the objective. Gonna go ahead and stop that, put some vision down. Objective-focused gameplay.
And nobody from the Ravens to come over and deal with this. So the Oni Warriors won't be an enhanced fire giant. And it's wild to think that 12 minutes ago, it was the Highland Ravens killing literally that exact same objective. But not much has happened since then. This Primal Fury will at least be a good consolation prize to the Highland Ravens after losing fire. But there's still quite a few towers up for the Oni Warriors. I don't imagine that this fire giant is going to be one to break open the base, but more so expose the Phoenixes.
Yeah, this is by no means going to be a game-ending fire giant, but it is a much more significant one than the one that the Ravens were able to grab earlier in the game. This one puts these tier 2s into some real danger, and you can see that Kana's the only one here stepping forward to defend this one, because he's not going to try to defend this tier 2 against 3. No shot. These tier 2s are pretty much given up by the Ravens by now, but they don't finish it off. Vote actually has to step back for one more shot. This is going to find ourselves the first real gold lead of this game. That's all the Warriors need to find on this first fire giant. But also at the state of the game right now, this far in, the gold lead isn't going to be too huge at this point. Sure, it's going to look big on the graphs, but with the way the builds are shaping up, everyone's about 4.5, 5 items deep, working on their 6th ones right now. You're not going to find too big of an item advantage here. This is really just to get pressure on the map, find yourself some more routes to take around the map, and put these Phoenixes under some real pressure, because that's where the things really start to get interesting. Can the Warriors find a good siege onto the Phoenix? And really, it's not hard to do when you have the Morrigan on your team. You just pick the best tool for the job and go at it. I love this response from the Ravens. They know they can't defend this tier 2 on left. Take this one down on right. They might even go for the Phoenix here, J-Mac.
It'll be NeilMah and Vote staying back to deal with the tier 2. Nika goes up in the sky. 2 made it back to base. 3 did not.
Okay.
And Nika is just going to be here to play distraction. Make sure that nobody can back in their face. That allows for a tier 2 on the left side to go down to the Oni Warriors. Smart play to make sure that Nika sticks around. And QvoFred even on the hunt. No Phoenix to be had for either of the teams, but trading out towers keeps the Highland Ravens from falling too far down. QvoFred not going to get the knockup with that damage, but maybe at least some return fire, because he does have 3 with him. And ult in by QvoFred does some good damage, but he needs a little bit more. He needs a little bit of extra help, but he will not get it. QvoFred doesn't need an execute for adapting. He'll find one. Nika will try and find the second, but adapting is the one who picks up the double kill. Now 2 fire giants off the Warriors.
You cannot let adapting just hang around in the back like that. And really, Qvo and Nika both should have known that he was there, because they saw him running with Kana up the lane. Sure, Kana used the blink, but now the fight goes over here into the Harpies.
Coast eats a lot of damage. The damage out of Vote and the mid laner is good. NeilMah finds at least something out there. But between Dardez and Vote, these 2 carries are swinging for the fences. They are hitting every single home run in their territory. Or I should at least say in enemy territory. Calvin and Angry not willing to step up to Vote and Dardez. 3-for-3 trade at the end of the day.
Man, the damage from this backline is just unreal right now. Dardez and Vote play this so well. If you've noticed, they're always together in these fights. They're constantly DPSing the same targets, and when one of them is under danger, the other is right there to put the damage on whoever's trying to dive them and just peel for their other backliner. That's why they're able to survive these fights so consistently. That's why Vote and Dardez both walk out of game 1 around the Fire Giant with a sliver of HP. It's because they're on the same target. They're communicating with each other and making sure that they are keeping each other alive. And it's just proving to be too much for the Ravens right now. They have to put one of them down. But how do you do that against Neil with the Scare's Blessing if adapting can't find the execute? It's just becoming such a big problem for the Ravens that they don't seem to have an answer.
We have only gotten to see, I believe, 1 actual execute come from adapting, and that was the first kill that the Highland Ravens got about 20-some-odd minutes ago up against NeilMah. Since then, it has just been the raw damage output from adapting. 4 and 4 for him. But you look across the way at the mid laner for the Oni Warriors. 7, 0, and 8 for Dardez. And it's only getting worse because Dardez is living through every one of these team fights. Perfect transformation targets, and now a setup because Fire Giant is just 30 seconds away from crashing back down. The Highland Ravens have a chance to defend this. They don't have any Phoenixes down. Minions are at a pretty favorable position as well.
Yeah, this is by no means a foregone Fire Giant for the Ravens. They are in a great position, actually, to step forward on this. Items are a little bit in favor of the Warriors right now. The gold lead is there, but it's not insurmountable right now. It's only 4,000. That's about half an item for most of the players on the Warriors right now. This Fire Giant's spawning in here. The Ravens are in position. They've got great initiation. They've got good peel. Now we just have to see them make it happen.
Fire Giant started. Nika will dash away. NeilMah has found Xngnnah. Xngnnah doesn't make it out of the fight. The damage is just too much. A crash in the back line by Nika. And QvoFred will put down the Hunter. They'll put down the mid lane Hunter for Dardez. And the Highland Ravens, with only Adapting and Calvin left, can they even defend against the 5 strong? Who cares about the Fire Giant? Says the Oni Warriors. They will march up the right side, but Adapting behind. Keep your eyes on the jungler. Can he make the impact play that he needs? Can Calvin come up with a massive ultimate in this fight? Adapting will be stopped by Nika in his tracks. Calvin picks up only NeilMah with the ultimate. Nika will deal with Adapting all by his lonesome. Needs a little bit of extra help. But the Titan at 30% health. The Oni Warriors will quietly win the team fight. And it will quietly take game 2 and the set off the Highland Ravens.
Beautiful fight coming out from the Warriors. If you notice there, Adapting was trying to find a flank onto the Warriors before that fight happened, but kind of just stepped up a little bit too far, and that was the go button from the Warriors. They found their target, and his health bar just absolutely melted J-Mac. Like, it was gone in like, what, a second and a half, maybe 2 seconds, if we're being generous. But the fact is, the front line just could not handle that amount of damage coming towards him, and once he falls, the entire team fight is just broken wide open.
It really feels like with these kinds of Guardian picks, these Khepris, the Noxes of time that we were seeing, it's essentially whoever I grab that doesn't have beads is going to die. And in this case, it was Xngnnah, and then all the dominoes fell over after that. The Oni Warriors take the 2-0. They move on to the second week of play, and we'll move over back to the desk.
The Oni Warriors get the SPL back on track here on Elimination Sunday at SMITE Summer Masters. But again, another competitive game here up against the Highland Ravens. This is a game, and really a set in general, that the Highland Ravens, you get 2-0'd, but I think backing away from this, and especially going into the next phase of the year for the Ravens in the SEC, this should give you a boost of confidence to realize, look, we are competing with Hexmambo, who were able to beat an SEC squad. And then you look at this set specifically, as far as the difference, how this set looks versus the first time these two teams played.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Highland Ravens made some strides. They're a competitive squad, and they should have a pretty successful phase in Phase 3. But the veteranship and the consistency of the Oni Warriors and their level of play ultimately shines through here in Game 2.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of summarizing it. Definitely a set to be proud of if you are the Highland Ravens. A highlight for me this time around was when Dardez turned in to vote, and then it was just double Xbalanque, and they were able to just trade up the fight. It looked like the Highland Ravens might be able to just win it out, and then it was they were just throwing the bullas just with each other back to back, and it was one of those like Spider-Man meme moments where they were just pointing at each other and able to just pop off. So just a great set throughout, and I think Dardez so impactful. I knew going into this set, like, give Dardez the Morrigan, there's going to be trouble, but there was a lot of trouble coming from the mid lane.
And look, Dardez has expanded his god pool recently, but think back to when the Oni Warriors were struggling a bit more consistency as a team, the types of picks Dardez would go back to. The Morrigan was often it. Seen a Morrigan now a couple of times in this tournament, Poseidon a couple of times in this tournament, and an 8-0-10 game here in game number 2 for Dardez. And on the flip side, we talked about Vote going into this set, Trelly, as one of the players that needs to find some consistency. I mean, really just a route for the Oni Warriors to grow out of, and I think Vote was able to do so here today. But just a real all-around good team game here for the Oni Warriors in game number 2. Things really slow down. Ravens build up. Small gold lead, but keep things even. That's when communication's so important, and I think the Oni Warriors probably would have liked it to be cleaner, but still happy to get out of this one with a 2-0 win.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, at one point it was 9-3 kills-wise. The Oni Warriors were so on point with fighting the fights across the map, but the objective play, I looked up and I was like, wait, the Ravens are still ahead in goal. Like, it just did not matter early on. And I think, you know, the farming of the Ravens certainly something to be looked at. They just probably wish they did a bit more damage and were standing up to these objectives, actually able to fight in the later stage. Definitely a close set, either one, but still, ends up 2-0, and you got to highlight the entirety of the Oni Warriors. I think no player didn't do their part here, right? Like,
no.
It was almost like a base race situation where Nika goes back, just stalls for so long on that right side. Could have been like a Phoenix for Phoenix trade, but not going to be the case. And again, just great playthrough.
I want to know what just happened.
Yeah, maybe J-Mac will tell us.
Hey, J-Mac, I'm going to call you out in a second, and I know this is a weird conversation for me to be having. You need to tell us whatever just happened, because at least do it in the interview, because I'm very curious. Whatever happens with the Oni Warriors, boy. Oh, is that what's happening? You might not be able to see it on camera, but I promise you it is funny. The Oni Warriors, I think, in high spirits after a set like this, Trelly. Now, and in reality, I think the way that this event is structured, you now get, I don't know how many days it is exactly, but a few days to get back, kick back, look back at your weekend in its entirety, assess what went right, assess what went wrong, and kind of refresh yourself going into the second week of play here. So the Oni Warriors get a 2-0 over the Highland Ravens, and J-Mac, what in the world happened? Let us know.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. Well, what happened was we've been talking about how Nika needs to step up for the team, and he's been able to do so here. Coach Chuckles will take a step down. I mean, look at the growth spurt that Nika's had just over the course of one weekend. But guys, you find the 2-0 over the Highland Ravens. You know, we just watched Solar Scarabs fall down to Hex Mambo. Was there any kind of worry, maybe in your mind, at least for the coach here, Chuckles, of your team, maybe dropping even a game over to this team?
I mean, it's always like, you never go into a game thinking, oh yeah, we're going to steamroll regardless of the competition. So it's, you always want to take it seriously, and I think after seeing what happened to the Bugs, we wanted to really make sure that didn't happen to us.
Yeah, a very long-winded game number one. I mean, Nika, you guys are going 40 minutes in. We had a double kill for VaporishCoast, dying then to a Fire Giant after. Kind of a momentum reset more than anything. I mean, talk to me kind of through the comms of game number one to kind of get you guys back in swinging.
Well, I think I don't know, the game one was kind of weird. I felt like we couldn't really get much momentum with like the comp we drafted. Like usually with the comp we get there, it's like more of a steamroll kind of game. They just made like really good plays in game one and two to like keep it going, and I think a little bit sleepy from us as well, especially the FG game two. But you know, we stayed strong, and all that matters is we won. You know, pretty bad weekend from ourselves, I think we'll look back, but yeah, another week coming up to work on a lot of mistakes we made this week.
Yeah, well, you guys do get to qualify at least into week number 2, so you'll be joining, at least for now, 5 of your other SPL teams, 1 SCC team out there, 1 more set to go at the very least. Chuckles, talk to me kind of for the coach's mentality in a game like this, a set like this one where it's real close game 1, game 2, still kind of close to start things out, and then kind of what does that change for you moving into the future weeks of play?
I mean, it's really just... It's a lot of focusing on what goes wrong and why, I feel, going forward, because we know things are obviously going wrong in these sets. Obviously, the last couple of weeks haven't been great. Dragons we lost, and today wasn't, you know, as clean as it could be. So I think it's really about, yeah, just focusing on what we can do, you know, to improve or to focus on, and how best to go about that.
Moving forward. Well, congrats on your win today. We look forward to seeing you guys next week in week 2 of Masters. We'll throw it back over the desk to close out the set.
Thank you.
And appreciate Nika for standing by with us, and of course Chuckles there with us for the post-game interview as well. Oni Warriors get their SMITE Summer Masters back on track, move themselves in to our second week of play. Reminder that next week is just 3 days, straight up single elimination bracket, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and that's where the Oni Warriors move themselves with a successful win here over the Highland Ravens. And so with this set, the Oni Warriors are able to push themselves on. Unfortunately, that means the Highland Ravens do drop out of this group, but this group completed. This group was always going to be hard for one of the SEC squads to make it out of, Trelly. The white-hot Jade Dragons and the SPL Force Oni Warriors, the 2 teams to advance out of Group C. But I don't think we can move on from this group, this graphic specifically, without talking about the Jade Dragons. The team looks near unstoppable, and maybe the best-looking SPL team out of this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I got to interview Final K towards the end of yesterday, I just said, are you guys the best team in the league? He hesitated for maybe a second, took a deep breath and said, yes. And I think the confidence shows.
In that tone of voice?
Oh, yeah. I think I was like, you you could have assumed that was fine. Okay, saying it. I just just overtook
It sounded
his spot.
exactly like him. I
Great.
thought.
I appreciate that, and I think the confidence shows. They haven't lost since they made their roster adjustment, and it looks like they want to continue doing so.
Well, and he definitely didn't dab because he gave that up for Len.
Of course.
Remember, no more dabbing for fine. Okay. One more set remains on Elimination Sunday here in week number 1 of SMITE Summer Masters, and that is the Atlantis Leviathans going up against the Cxbalanque Wardens. So one more spot in our single elimination bracket next weekend, and one of these two teams on the bottom of your screen will be taking it. I mentioned it going into this set, Trelly. You always are going to favor the SPL teams, but Hex Mambo showed us that you show up, you have a consistent enough game plan, you have something that could potentially catch these SPL teams off guard, anything can happen.
Yeah, no doubt. You definitely are favoring the Levi's going in, but you always got to assume that the Warden's going to bring something spicy. I already highlighted it last time I was on the desk. When you get to go home and just watch some competitive SMITE, watch some upsets, for example, in the Hex Mambo, maybe you learn a thing or two, land a few pocket picks that could just take a game off. One game alone is enough to upset the mental, and at that point, anything can happen. So I'm definitely excited about the next set. Anything can happen.
And look, Leon is in the jungle for the Cxbalanque Wardens. Who knows what he's going to be playing? One more set remains on Elimination Sunday. Atlantis Leviathans, Cxbalanque Wardens, right after this.